All right. Today is January the 2nd, 2022. Happy New Year to everyone. And to start off the meeting, we have Hugh posted, don't know what to say, but there was just this, about an hour or so ago, he posted a post. So how do you want to tackle
no,
this,
say
Hugh?
Joe Rogan. It's the Joe Rogan
okay, it's a
interview
Joe
with
Rogan
Dr.
interview.
Robert, but you can't say Dr. Robert's name. I think
Okay, gotcha.
That's a trigger word already. I think I got dinged already for something with this. But
Okay.
yeah, don't say the V word. Just say jab, and just say Dr. Robert, because yeah, it's really explosive. I'm only halfway through, but it's amazing. I don't think they're going to be able to walk this one back. It really just blows the can off it. I mean, Joe Rogan had 120 million views just on that comet thing with Graham Hancock and those guys. I think this is going to be in the hundreds of millions, and it's it's such a big bomb. It's like, oh, that's a trigger word. So I'm just amazed. But anyway, I normally watch things at like twice speed. This thing I'm watching at normal speed, and it's yeah, there are just one or two things I would like to say that might not come across, but one of them is I hope it's coming across to you what I mean. I know everybody thinks I'm a complete nutcase and for that conspiracy theorist, but like, are you starting to get the picture? Just notice how many times that Dr. Roberts talks about his background and how many times he mentions CIA, HIV, and like defense bioweapons research. That's they all like this, right? It's a blend, a complete blend, and all of these guys is doing. There's no good stuff in this. All of the dual use stuff, everything they do is dual use. So I'm just saying. I was just getting to the part where the guy was saying about immunodeficiency, and and he was. So I just stopped it now. The part where Joe Rogan was saying, "Oh, shingles," and getting all this out, like, "Oh no." I saw that. I saw all of these things. These are things from HIV. It's just again and again. I can't say it enough. HIV, and you can't find it. It's being purged. I mean, viciously purged. The purged and suppressed is this connection. But anyway, Sophie, you were saying something interesting before we started, and we thought we'd better get the recording going. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry to have started the thing before the recording, but yeah, that Dr. Robert, I heard him first in the summer when he joined a group of general practitioners and actually family doctors in Canada who had been stricken off the various jobs they had and positions because they wanted to give informed consent. They were not anti-jabbers, but they were cautious, and they were saying what Dr. Robert's saying, reserved for special cases, elderlies and fragile people. And they were not in favor of the kids being included and the young people. So anyway, he got a name there that I followed him because I saw his credentials, and it's quite impressive. But what was very interesting is that he mentioned, I'm roughly at the same place where you are into listening to the talk, but he mentioned early that the person that tried to shut down the first studies on the treatments that were, for example, given in India, is the same woman who was implicated in the FDA with the problem of the OxyContin. It's the same person, So we're talking about a real lobster part of people. It's just, yeah.
I think maybe it doesn't come across to people outside America that that there's a big disconnect I think particularly in people in Britain where, you know, medicine is kind of seen as a right. And I don't think people in the rest of the world understand that it is the biggest business in America. It is rapacious. It's utterly ruthless, completely money oriented. It's a den of thieves, and it's extraordinary profits. I mean, it's just, you know, it's just a nest of gold bugs in there, and so I think that doesn't come across with the NHS and cheap medicine and stuff, that you don't have this association with big business. And we're talking mafia style big business. I mean, it's just the mafia and all the drug dealers. They just went legit. They just said, look, we can do much better getting FDA approval for our drugs than, you know, just selling them direct on the street. And that's what's happened. And it's all in there with the, you know, with the medical insurance industry, and then with the governments and the VA. It's one third of the US economy is just going into this crap. So it's just a den of thieves, you know. It's just, and then, you know, I notice get downvoted like hell. If you say anything about anti-science, anti-medicine, anti-hospitals, it's, oh, they hate it. Is it like, guys, wake up? They're not trying to help. They're not in the business of health, right? They're in the business of money. So if you're interested in health, you're interested in nice hospitals and stuff, then get rid of the system. Stop supporting it. Stop downvoting me if I say that it's, you know, pointing out all its flaws. It's like, people need to wake up. This is not, the doctor's not your friend. The doctor's a fucking enemy.
I had a little group of women who were with me for New Year, and one of them works in a hospital, and she was asking me loads of questions because I'm an ex-doctor and stuff like that. So I showed her a paper that I got from the, what we call the HSC here, is the health and safety whatever body that supervises everything, hospitals, doctors, etc. And they send reports to doctor regularly on epidemiology, statistics and stuff. And because I don't know, I didn't change my email, and I'm still on their mailing list, so they still send me all their statistics. So I received this report. If you like, I'll send it to you individually, because I don't think it's material to post on Reddit. But it's the statistics on the deaths, hospitalization, and status of patients. No, but you know, since from June to December 2021. There's an introduction that praises the job, and the conclusion is, it's a 20-page report with graphs. It's very boring to read, but the conclusions are both the narrative that we all know, but when you go into the figures, for example, I think it was December, 63% of deaths were in jabbed. There was ICU, same. I mean, it was just going. And I'll send it to you if you like. But when I showed that to that girl who works in administration, a very big hospital here, she just couldn't believe it. And I had to show her the heading. It's there. Now, we're not as controlled as the States. We still have some civil servants who are working, you know, who don't have conflict of interest. So they publish these things. And it's just probably corrected. You know, it's just the introduction and the conclusion is just changed to fit the narrative, so that the doctors who read that, they just don't bother looking at all the graphs and the numbers. They say, okay, they said it's good. Yeah, it's, and you'll see anyway. The figures speak for themselves.
Yeah, I posted something similar from the figures from Denmark, and that's kind of shocking. It's basically the people that have pre-infections and the people that are jabbed have way more chance of winding up in hospital. I mean, we're talking 83% versus 7%. So it's in a population that's, you know, kind of 80% jabbed. So you know, that's shocking.
In Dr. Roberts' thing is that he actually, the study, I've written it down somewhere and I want to read it, because he talks about natural immunity versus because he says that personally he got jabbed for one or two reasons that he mentions, but one of the he got it, and he just said, "Well, I didn't really want to get vaccinated, but I had to travel. Oh, to travel." But yeah, there's an article that's absolutely seems to be very serious about the strength of natural immunity as opposed to jabbed immunity. That is also in total contradiction with the official narrative that they're banging into people's head constantly.
Yeah, I always just come back to this thing about if this thing is frigging with your immune system, this is the pattern you would see. You'd see a bit of relief, basically immediately for about 3 months after a jab, and then you'd be in worse position than you were, and that's what the figures are showing. So it's like, I don't know, man. Well, we'll see how it develops, but South Africa is over the peak. It went down as fast as it went up. Here in Greece, it's going through the roof. It's like, but deaths seem to be constant.
The only place where it's not going through the roof is Japan, because I was looking at it and they seem to have, I don't know, it's a complete different pattern of approach. It would be interesting because, Mike, you're going to be in contact a lot with Japan in the future, and you're going to be able to see for yourself. And
I
I'm
hope
sure that
so,
you're
yeah.
up to date with what's going on there. It's quite interesting to observe.
It's all voluntary there, right? They're not even pushing. Yeah.
Right. As far as I know, there's no mandates, and that's also on their ministry, health ministry website. They explicitly say they're not going to force or these the jabs.
Yeah, I keep on posting all of these things. It's like, oh man, it's such a weird time as you see all these people, like hundreds of thousands of people, and it's starting to get a little bit rough out there. All these protests, and they will not report them. The BBC, everything is like blanket silence. It's just, I mean, who can not finally wake up in this era? The people, it's like Spencer and all those guys who dissed us for being, anti-jab. It's like, where are those guys coming from? I mean, can't they see that what's going on? It's like, this is bad, man. It's really bad. Anyway, unless anybody's getting something else to say on that, I just wanted to make an observation. I was saying, like, we should try get ExxonMed up to 1,000 members and then get out of Dodge. And our membership's going down, and so I'm a little bit suspicious because I think they're not, the stats are not right. They're gaming it, and so it's very hard to tell. But I try to do these tests. I put things up, and I to some very like low view videos or something, very old videos and stuff, and then see how many people are active and how many people look, to try and get a feel for it. So I can't be absolutely sure, but I think what they're doing is they're definitely running algorithms, because we've got all those bots that came and plagued us. But they I think what they're doing is they're nudging, they're training the sub on so they kind of reward you with members, as if your membership's growing, even though it's absolutely fake. And then if you use the wrong keywords and go a bit against the grain, do a few websites, make a few associations that are not right, then they start, winding them back. But if you look at the pattern of the times when those things, people unsubscribe and stuff, they look scattered. They don't look like a cluster around. You can definitely see a cluster of people in America come online, cluster of people in Australia, cluster of people in the UK is our audience. So you know the time zones, and you get a good idea for where people cluster and when they're using it. And they also tell you, like 8 online, which I trust those kind of thing. But then the unsubscriptions and stuff don't correlate well. They correlate much better with a bot. So anyway, I'm just putting that out there because I'm not sure if we really want to pursue 1000K, since it's just a training algorithm where they're trying to nudge you into saying the right thing and shape the narrative.
Oh, I'll post videos of my cat and it will just start to rise again, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, no. If you really want it to rise, start doing pro big tech narratives. So if you start, you see, I did that one spoof thing where I did that sarcastic thing, like, what is wrong with these anti-jabbers, and I got a lot of upvotes fairly quickly, and I was like, are these guys not sarcastic, or are these bots, or are these people that are just clueless? I got the idea that a lot of people upvoted because they didn't know it was ironic.
Yeah, but in my opinion, I think the membership was going much faster up. It grew from 600 to 900 suddenly, and then it's plateaued. But when there was much more about the climate, when we were more about collapse, and I think collapse is a kind of a magnet. I know it's not a very, I'm talking about membership, but I maybe we just want to, because recently there's been much less about that. Well, there's always some, but they're, I don't know.
Yeah, you might be right there.
The prepping and the whole lot and all this sort of stuff. If it's just to get membership, who cares? Because if we can change the name and move to another thing afterwards, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Oh yeah, no, it was just as a target, just as a parting, just to close it up nicely in case somebody came back afterwards and said this is completely fringe or something. You say, oh, it's not fringe, 1,000 members, that kind of thing. People tend to do that. So it's like, I just thought we just want to put a bow on it when we leave. But yeah, on that point, I thought I was going to have the manifesto finished today, the first draft of the manifesto finished today, but I didn't make it. I still got a couple of days. It's taking me a long time to get this. And I'm putting a lot of links in and stuff, and then I keep on following the links and going down all these rabbit holes. There's such a lot of interesting stuff out there. I will, in the next couple of days, I promise I will get the first draft out there. Then we can start discussing that, and then it's all collapsology and stuff like that.
I also wanted to say that I got a confirmation. I told Lord Hugh, but I didn't tell the other ones that I had invited for New Year's Eve the Irish rep of DGR, and she is happy to give us an interview in January. And she's going to see Mark Boyle today, so she's going to give us some fresh news. And I'm really happy she's going to come on because she's a really interesting person, because she's tried to. She has experience, because she even tried to use a political platform here in a little party called People Before Profit, because she tried to get into the game just because she wanted to forward the agenda of DGR. So she's tried to go into. She even was involved with XR at the start, so she's got a good knowledge of all that, and she has a view very similar to what we have on the whole thing. So I think we could have a very interesting exchange with her. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks she'll be free for an interview.
And Paul Kingsnorth is also probably around, right? I'm sure that'll be an interesting conversation. But no response from Sabine Hoffenfelder.
No, she didn't respond to my I wrote to the email that was on her YouTube channel, and no, I did the question exactly as I posted in your email there. Wanted to discuss, the change of I didn't use the word flippening, but no, but she didn't answer.
Oh, that's a pity. But yeah, maybe we try again soon in the new year. Then people might be a little more focused. But yeah, people do eventually get to the mailbox. But let's see. I feel the first thing is to get get the manifesto out there, and then we can start promoting stuff. But yeah,
is this a large document you produced? You know, the manifestos are quite extensive.
20 pages sort of thing.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm trying to put everything in one place, because I feel that we should be able to tell people, what we were about, because it's, I was thinking it should be obscure. I'm thinking all these years it should be obscure, and people get into it, but now I realized people are not interested in getting into obscure stuff. People's tolerance for anything unusual, anything off message and stuff is really low now. Not the old days where Tintin would go and find interesting shit. Sleuthing. Nobody's a sleuth anymore, is it? Yeah.
I was thinking that when Sophie was just talking about the membership seemed to go up when we were posting the collapse topics. But you see that the collapse topics are easily digestible. They're got more entertainment value. Whereas, when you post things that require a bit of thought, maybe that does lose members because they're not willing to put the mental effort into it. They're not instant gratification things. So
yeah, people want doom confirmation. I think they're depressed and they want doom confirmation. It's nice to get an affirmation that your doom is justified. I think that's what the doom scrollers are doing and stuff, and collapse. There is a strange evolution. What's been going on is that it's funny how these things, you think things don't matter or it's water off a duck's back, but if you look at the Planet of the Humans, and so there's been such a sea change after that. I think there are all these kind of milestones that pass. You get something like that, it comes out, you get a big backlash, and you think, well, that nothing happened, didn't change anything, and then you notice suddenly it all changes. I've noticed there's been such a big sea change in all these people that believe that you can do solar panels and ESG and electric vehicles, and nobody's saying all that shit anymore. There are more and more people getting the picture that we're a little bit screwed. And I'm seeing more of a tone of the people saying like, oh, but you can always make things better. It doesn't matter. We probably, it doesn't matter how screwed we are. We can always make it better. And it's like, I'm trying to discourage that thought, because that's this collapse denial that they're moving into. Like Michael Mann's collapse denial. We can always make it better. I said, no, you can't. It's like, it's a tipping point. The dominoes have gone. It's like, okay, we shot the guy through the head, but we can always make it better. It's like, no. Once you pull the trigger, it's done. Over. But these guys have this sense of agency that I think is what got us into this predicament in the first place, is this sense of superiority and agency and control. It's like, no, we only have the control to push a boulder off the cliff and cause an avalanche. We don't have any control over the avalanche. It's all this thinking like, well, we have the ability to make the avalanche, we have the ability to control it. No, it doesn't work that way. You can fuck things up, it doesn't mean you can fix them. Jesus, but the people are stuck on us,
Oh, yeah. Bye-bye.
Hi, Ryan.
Oh, Ryan is here. Hi, Ryan. It's
Oh, sorry. I thought I was still on mute.
No, I sorry about it. We didn't have the one in the morning, but we decided last week not to do the one in the morning because it was like just holiday fever and stuff. So people just said, okay, we'll just do one, and well, next weekend, next Sunday, let's do two. Yeah. Anyway,
Gary, you commented under the meeting that you had some ideas for discussion today. Gary, do you know you were in the comments?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just put it there. I'm not. You know, I mean, it's if we get onto other things which we've already done. It was basically the confusion over Abigail Thorne philosophy tube apparently being hijacked by the system, and the other thing was the discussion between Bob and Hugh about Paul Kingsnorth. So I don't know. Has anyone else got any burning questions, or will we go into either of those a bit? Has somebody else got a burning issue there?
Just one thing which I found interesting, which I think Ryan will find interesting, is that I found this video on Numberphile, which was there are two guys that make maths videos on Numberphile, and then there's two blue, one brown, I think is the other guy.
Three blue, one brown.
3 blue, 1 brown. Yeah. And it was about the Russell paradox and how, you know, again, it's random is strange. It really matters on how you construct it. So it was a really interesting video on that, but it was more to the point of what we were saying, is that there's no such thing as random. It's very much depends on how you construct it. Which is amazing, because it's it's very much a lot of the stuff in maths is pick an arbitrary this and pick a random that, and everything done in clinical trials is done randomized testing and all. So it's extraordinary that people don't realize. They take it for granted that there's this thing called random, and they're like, no, it's a fiction. But so a lot of the stuff, the pillars of our society and academia, are built on sand, and that nobody seems to realize it.
Are there any proofs of randomness? Has anyone tried that? I imagine they have.
No, that was what I was saying. That friend of mine who was hired specifically to do that these guys had a random number generator, and he was hired as a consultant to do a proof that it was actually random. And so he waltzed in there thinking, yeah, this should be no problem, and then quickly astounded himself, saying like, hang on a minute, there is no proofs of randomness and anything, and the more he got into it, the more he realized, hang on, there's a big hole in the whole of science and maths. He's a mathematician. He didn't know that until he actually had to try and prove something that random. Then he realized what Gregory Chaitin and all these guys have been saying, is this randomness is, there is no such thing. Randomness is a fiction. It's like, oh, okay, there's no order, there's no structure. There's like, no, that's you've got to look at the mechanism that you got the number sequence from to know whether it's random or not.
Well, I think you just brought up something that might also be fictional, which is order. Order may not be real.
Yeah, conversely, order is also not real. It's kind of in the eye of the beholder. But this is fascinating stuff. I mean, this is way bigger than why there is something or nothing. And it's not part of anybody's dialogue as far as I can see. But this is far more important than religion or science or epistemology or something. It's like, is there anything? A whole society is based on order. And he's saying, what is order? And formal axiomatic systems. And if you go to court and you go through a court case, what they're trying to do is through a formal axiomatic process, get to an ordered society. Like nobody ever said the whole legal system might be impossible. Provably so by mathematics. It has actually been done, and nobody wants to look at it. So all these conservatives out there want an ordered society, and they're like, what are you asking for? Show me what order looks like, mathematical proof, and I'll give it to you. I'll order our society around it. So all these things, the Great Reset, the One World Order, all of these things, they're all grand schemes for control and order. And so you're like, what are you doing, guy? They're like, well, you know what order is. It's the opposite of chaos and randomness and anarchy. They're like, explain. See, we take all these things for granted and nobody asks. So, then you get all these things in politics, like anarchy through order. And they say like, oh, this is anarchy. Well, anarchists will tell you that the O in the OA symbol stands for order. It's order through disorder. And a lot of the guys say, it's all conflicted, like a lot of the things about the invisible hand and the market and all of these things. It's saying like, if there's totally laissez-faire economics and nobody interferes, then order will arise, efficiency will arise automatically out of the disorder. That's the very first economist, Adam Smith, said that. It's like, is that true? let's see a little mathematical proof, Adam.
Do you think, when just thinking about you've spoken a couple of times about the universe as a sort of fractal thing unfolding. Isn't that a kind of an order?
No, because well, you see, the thing is, it's a badly formed question. The whole thing about is the world ordered or disordered or what is chaos? It's an ill-formed question, just like, do we have free will? It's a stupid question. It's like a meaningless thing. So like, who do you mean by we? Who do you mean by free? So it's the same that you can't say, if you said yes or no, it would be wrong because you're just looking at it wrong. So I'll give you an example. Take, for instance, Darwinism. And so, people won't let go of this idea of, it's obvious, the fittest survives. It's, Herbert Spencer's idea, the survival of the fittest. And then they tell you, no, don't say that. Say it's the survival of the better adapted. But I mean, Alfred Wallace, that was his favorite phrase, survival of the fittest. So Alfred Wallace did far more than Darwin to promote Darwinism. In fact, he believed in Darwinism a lot more than Darwin did. And so, yeah, Darwinism is survival of the fittest. So forget it, junior biologists, that is the correct phrase. So then you've got to say, what is fit? What is fit and what is the unit of fitness? And so wherever they look, they get it wrong. If they look at the population level, then they will get into a big fight because they say there's no group selection. If they look at it at the individual level, like Darwin thought, then it doesn't work out because you have altruism and Hamiltonian spite, and then you can have, all these collective organisms and eusocial organisms. Oh, by the way, you see, like E.O. Wilson just died. That was sad. But anyway, E.O. Wilson was the first person who talked about the superorganism. And then once you look at, it's like there's a way better book than any of these idiots like Dawkins comes up with. Is Gödel Escherbach by Douglas Hofstadter. And so he addresses this question of in a way of, what is the entity? And so he has this idea of, Aunt Hillary. It's a joke because, one of the characters is an anthill called Aunt Hillary. And, it's like, what is it? I mean, it's a collective of autonomous ants, but it is a superorganism. So if you have superorganisms in nature, where do they stop? Where do you draw the line? What is the unit of selection? So then, they go down. The Price and Hamilton went down to the molecule and said, well, It must be the gene. That's the atom of selection. So, haha, got you. And you can't get any smaller than that. So that must be the unit of selection. You say, yeah, but it's strung together on a strand of DNA or RNA with all its pals. It's got all these histones and methylates, and they all this epigenetic selection and stuff. So it's like a gene can't exist on its own. You can't have a gene and say like, I'm the gene for Dickie Dawkinson. And then you say like, well, it doesn't work without the lung gene and the oxygen gene and the blood gene. So what are you saying? That the genes, it's meaningless. The whole idea of Darwinian selection is utterly meaningless, because as soon as you look at what the unit of selection is, there is no correct boundary. So you can say like, what is the unit of selection for a gene in an oak tree? What, the forest? The whole of Germany? The whole planet? What's the unit that's fighting for survival? And you say, well, it's whatever it procreates. It's whatever, it gets to procreate. And you say like, well, I mean, mitochondria get to procreate, and they're not even part of the genome. They're just coming along for the ride. But you're not going to live without mitochondria, but mitochondria were captured. They're a foreign organism. So what's selection? What are you talking about? It's horseshit. It's utter horseshit. But our whole politics and our economics and people's survival strategy is based on this Darwinian horseshit.
Hugh, something in what we've been talking about is just making me think of relativism. A long time ago, you and I had a discussion about the sort of axioms on which we build so much human, I don't know what you would call it, intellectual structures built upon axiomatic assertions. And so, in a sense, a lot of the human enterprise is this business of building castles in the air. But I'm just thinking about, going back what you were saying about the proofs not being proofs of randomness or proofs of order, and then if you start to accept that we're selecting these axioms that we can't be sure that they're true, and proceeding to do amazing things on the basis of something that might not be correct. But I'm just a thought that came to me was that this all sort of connects back even with the Abigail Thorne videos, the philosophy tube, where there was just so much relativism there that you were left floating around. Is the fundamental thing that we're dealing with in talking about all of these things, the human struggle with trying to reduce the stress of being in a totally relativistic setting? That we're trying to establish some fixed thing to hang on to for fear of being blown away by everything being that we can't determine anything for certain. I don't know if that question makes any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. So I wouldn't call them axioms. They unexamined assumptions. And I think the whole point of it is we're nuts. We're absolutely barking, stark raving mad, and we don't realize it. So, if you look at, say, okay, if you got Abigail Thorne's videos and the philosophy in them and stuff, there's this kind of, point by point by point. If you did like a Gödel numbering on each one of the points and analyze them, you could basically show pretty well that basically they were inconsistent or incomplete. And that's the essence of it, is you can get order in a sense because you can get pattern symmetry and stuff like that, but it's only local. And I think that's the big problem, is people are trying to get universals. So they're trying to get universal truths and absolute truths, and then people are trying to like water things down and make them all relative. So you have like, oh, there aren't any genders, we're gender fluid, and there's 27 types of gender, and so you don't get binary. But you know, you can play that game forever. There's just there's no truth or untruth in that, and it begins to look like you know, the gladiators at the Circus Maximus. They're just pitting against, you know, the retiarius against the secutor. So they're kind of two principles, like a kind of a yin and yang, or the male and female principles, and they're just endlessly playing. So you know, you can see it as a big endless game. But you see, it's massively contradictory, because what you said, that they're trying to reduce anxiety. They're trying to beat death. So the thing that's doing all of this stupid game is primarily our alien cortex. And what it's trying to do is it's playing chess. You know, chess is like all about the death of the king, right? Skakmat. Skakmat is checkmate. So checkmate, the word checkmate comes from skakmat, which means watch. Mat is death. The mat is the ancient Egyptian god Mat, pretty much death, Kali. And so it's like trying to stay out of death. So it's basically doing all these moves to stay out of this condition of death. And that's pretty much what our alien cortex is doing, continually playing chess. But here's why it's contradictory, because it wants to nail the game forever. So it wants to get to a point where it's won forever. And that's final. And it's saying, like, it's the opposite of life. It's trying to stay alive by achieving death. So in other words, the finality of that is a metaphor for death. It's in the pursuit. It's trying to pursue life by pursuing death. I mean, our whole society is doing it. You can see it on, you know, the global industrial society. As the economists say, well, it's to make prosperity and make things better. What they mean is for you to try and prolong life, to try and do self-preservation. And look what we've done. We've killed our species and our planet in the pursuit of this, trying to make things better.
In a way, then it's actually a good thing that that it can't be demonstrated if something's definitely random or definitely ordered, because that prevents establishing this fixed certain death position that you're talking about. It's a kind of limit.
Good or bad. Is it good or bad that you can't square a circle? It's just you can't square a circle.
Well, maybe not so. Maybe just replace good or bad with the fact that we've reached a limit there, and we can't. You know, the alien cortex or whatever it is about us can't proceed past that point. It's trying to. It can't. It's reached the limit of what it can do to create certainty or to create death, as you term it. So I mean, maybe that just in itself is an alarm bell. That, you know, if you're trying to achieve some kind of universal explanation and you reach a limit beyond which you can't go, it might be an indication that you're heading in the wrong direction. But human beings don't seem to be getting the point.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in life that are kind of meant to be contradictory. We always want to remove contradictions and get finality and get certainty and stuff like that. And so people kind of think, you know, there's a right thing and a wrong thing. But a lot of the strategies that life has are deliberately, in a way, contradictory. So in other words, you're supposed to be a hypocrite. So we always, you know, liberals on the left wing and all these progressives always quick to prick out hypocrisy and, oh, you're a hypocrite because you're a climate activist, but you still fly. And they're thinking that there must be this perfect thing where you're a climate activist and don't fly and all your ducks are in a row and stuff. And there's this kind of involution where we say, like, no, it's actually optimal that we are hypocrites. So a lot of things, you know, are things where, like, you should fly and be a climate activist. And it's not wrong to call that hypocritical. That's all, the stable state of the system. So in other words, in trying to sort out all the, we are supposed to have incongruencies, and we are supposed to have contradictions in our things. In other words, I'm struggling here. I'm trying to say that you are supposed to have some untruths, and you shouldn't get to the point where you say, okay, I've reached a point of wisdom that I'll iron out all the untruths, or say that we're supposed to be hypocritical on this point. That also is incorrect. So in other words, I'm not explaining this very well, is that you shouldn't always, the optimum is not always being aware of the hypocrisy or allowing the hypocrisy. The stable state might be that, evil gets done, and we're hypocritical about it, and that's kind of good. So does that make any sense? I didn't do that very well at all.
Well, the way I thought about it was, let's say you are making a New Year's resolution to go to the gym, and then 3 months later, you decided you're not going to do that because you have other things you got to do. And like, which of those yous is the one that you're supposed to be consistent to? Like if you were to remain consistent entirely, then you'd be in an absolute immobile prison of your own design, where you couldn't be flexible and modify where you are. You'd just be trapped in your web of promises or statements, and you become crystalline and just frozen in your ability to interact with the world.
Yeah, that's it. So it's kind of like saying, like, we think there's something absolute and right and wrong. So we want to get to the bottom of the right and wrong of the situation. So you're saying, like, well, we're prosecuting this in law, and that's logically inconsistent. It's people's brains made them do it, something like that. And then people want to get to the truth. So specifically scientists and things like that say, well, the law must be corrected because it's only people's brains doing this. And so then we're getting to a better place. And you say, no, we all too often discount the fact that the law might be optimal being hypocritical. So in other words, that it might be people's brains made them do that, and the law is an ass for prosecuting them, but it's better off that way for some other goal, like the survival of the species or something. So, in other words, hypocrisy is not always wrong, and probably saying that hypocrisy is not always wrong might be wrong, because it leads people to say, oh, okay, hypocrisy is okay. Neither one of them is correct, in other words. So in other words, it's a kind of pickle you get into with a higher wisdom. If you think of it this way, if you're utterly forgiving and you're Christ-like, and you say, okay, I forgive anybody, murderers, Hitler, everybody, I forgive them. And you say, well, it sounds pretty good. And you say, well, but what's the counter argument? The counter argument is you don't forgive Hitler. And you say, well, but then you're a hypocrite, because then you're not, loving your enemy. You're not, you're taking the log out of your own eye before your brother's eye. All of this kind of stuff. And you say, there's another position that says, like, no, we're supposed to condemn Hitler and be hypocrites, and that's the best for some longer goal, like survival of the community or the species or something like that. So in other words, Christ could be selling us a curveball by doing, by being forgiving. So in other words, I'm not getting this point across at all well. I'll have to think about how to communicate it. But the idea of pursuing a right or a wrong, it basically, we might be doing something in our society that is inconsistent and wrong, hypocritical, but you don't want people to know that. You want it to be that way and be stable that way. I'm not getting this point across at all well. Anyway, imagine, for example, politicians. Then everybody wants politicians to be good, And then everybody imagines this thing where we like, every time the politicians do something bad, there's uproar and stuff, and everybody moralizes, and Monbiot and all these guys start getting on their high horse about it, and they're thinking there's some place we get to that's better than this, and they overlooking the fact that no, that might be the best place to be, where politicians are a bunch of shits, and Monbiot pointlessly points it out forever and ever, and nothing happens.
Does this connect up very well with the idea of consistency? Because we demand consistency too. You get, for instance, to be friends with somebody on the basis of their consistent, the way they present themselves to you over a period of time. You think you know them to a certain degree, you're comfortable with them, or they've got something is satisfying, and yet. Because consistency relates to hypocrisy in the sense that that the person might not be able to keep presenting that same persona, and I wonder about that. I suppose I'm speaking personally a bit, that I've always found it very taxing to know people. Because I feel that they're constantly handing out an expectation that you remain the same, and I find it an impossible task. There's a certain, so it always seems to arise at a certain point where the consistency game can't be kept up anymore. So I'm just wondering, does that?
Yeah, you see, I think the reason why people want consistency is they're trying to farm each other. So we dreadful slave owners. We're always trying to shape the world and enslave everything, and have machine slaves, energy slaves working for us, and getting always trying to get the world to suit us. And so we're great habitat creators, particularly well. I mean, our alien cortex is not our whole brain. But a large part of that, our demand for consistency in other people, is so that we can efficiently farm them and use them, so that they're reliable and consistent. And so the essence of anti-slavery is being random. The reason why they put people in schools and school them, and particularly school them for the clock, is because you have to have regularity to exploit the slave. You can't exploit a random number. So you can't make a living out of a random number, and so that's a problem. We're all trying to make a living out of each other, and so that puts that a social credit score is really a score on how reliable you are. So in other words, how machine-like you are and consistent. So, if you want a lousy social credit score, you just be a random. You just one day do random acts of kindness, and one day I do random acts of heinous, obnoxious behavior.
If I may, I'd like to synthesize all the three topics of the order and randomness and consistency, going to the word that you said, Gary, which unifies them all, which is expectations. So we have, when our expectations are violated, we'll maybe say, oh, that's chaotic, or that's random, or that's inconsistent. When we, and the idea behind expectations is that we have a model of the world or behavior or some other person in our head, and we're expecting that to match our sense data, right? We're expecting the outcome to be to be matching that, and when it doesn't, then we have an expectation violation, and then we get some chemical, emotional response to that, and that's where we hang the definitions of these words on. So when you're talking about entropy or something. You'd have a mug dropping and say, oh, it's increasing the entropy because you're creating disorder when the mug smashes on the floor. But really, that's just taking the expectation of object recognition of the mug and making it so that you can't recognize it anymore on the floor. And that smashing your expectation is a psychological hack. Same with the randomness, the consistency, all of that. And you're absolutely right that the for capital to be deployed, capitalists need predictability. They need to be able to project out into the future and say, okay, if I deploy my capital, then there's a reasonable expectation of return. But if you have a chaotic environment where you're not really able to predict anything, then the risk outweighs the benefit to you. So that's why the Fed likes to telegraph, oh, we're not going to raise interest rates for a while. Don't panic. It'll be fine. It's all this, making sure that you have the expectations still maintained so that you can continue to build structures on top of those expectations. And that's what our economy is based on, what our social relationships are based on. But yeah, if you want freedom, that's somehow at odds with the in some sense, freedom is the ability to break expectations.
Yeah, so there's risk involved in having unpredictability. So if you're a banker, and these guys who are farming us, ultimately all the big cabal who's running everything, they're bankers, they're financiers, and their whole game is extracting rent out of us. But you see, the game is predicated on getting a regular purse or regular coupon on each dollar in circulation and all the debt. Well, the whole thing is based on debt, right? So they charge a little bit of interest, and that interest is predicated on how much risk. They've got to have a risk premium, and the risk is default or some random act of God. So if every investment went out and hedged against that with corresponding insurance to make sure you wouldn't be caught by surprise and you would lose your capital, then the whole economy wouldn't be worthwhile. So the whole economy is based on a fraud because it's based on the fraud that the interest actually covers the risk premium, which it doesn't. And so so everything we do in terms of our economy, and the reason why we'll never make it green or sustainable or anything like that is that the risk cannot be accounted for because the risks are not uniform. Risks are by definition random. So in other words, every single insurance company is just waiting for an event that's bigger than the insurance company. And it comes on a log scale. So this insurance by its nature is impossible, just like having a casino and having it viable forever is impossible. Every casino is going to be wiped out at some point by a lucky gambler. And so every insurance industry is going to be wiped out by an adverse event. So the entire economy is actually a big fraud, and it's temporary. It's based on kind of a shell game. It's everybody looks at all these things like the continuity of the stock market and how the Dow is going up and the Nasdaq's going up, and if you actually go and have a look at the Dow, if you go back to the very first companies that were part of the Dow, the only reason why the Dow has gone up is those first companies were circulated out. So in other words, they keep on changing the makeup of the Dow and the Nasdaq and the FTSE and the Russell 500 and all these kind of things. They keep on swapping out all the players. So it's kind of like imagine if you go to a race course and you bet on a clump of horses, but then you keep on changing which horses you're betting on, and then saying, look at my bet, I'm still coming first. You say, no, if you look at your original bet, all those horses died on the side of the track long ago. So all companies have a kind of a life cycle, and then they die. You know, all the companies, if you go and have a look at all the companies that were around in 1800 in the US, they're all gone now. And so, but you say, but the stock market's still roaring. And so say, only because they changed horses and made it appear that, you know, it was still paying off. But unless they do that little shell game of changing all the players, you see, if you actually went and did a fair bet where you put some money on some companies and then just rode them forever, your investment would eventually be worth zero. Now, they hide that from you, and they say, no, if you invested $10 back in 1800, now you'd be Bill Gates. Only if you knew how to change the horses in exactly the way they did it on the Dow. So it's all a big fraud that's based on a risk premium miscalculation.
I think probably it was Ryan made a point a couple of weeks ago about. I think you were talking about superannuation and you know how somebody's fund could decrease in value by 50%, and then they say, but it's recovered that amount. But as he pointed out, if you had $100 and it was reduced by 50%, and then you ended up with 50, and then it increased back to the former level, you would only have 75. You wouldn't have your 100 again. What I wanted to ask was, let's see, what people are trying to do is calculate everything so that it works out for them. And, you know, should we be going for a totally different mode of operation? And that's where I was sort of thinking again about how everything seems to be so relative and floating around and not fixed and confusing. Go on, sorry, did you want to interject?
Yeah, the best thing of all is for it to be, we should all be like these oligarchs are switching horses. So in other words, if you wanted to make an economy that really worked, you just make a dollar expire. What's wrong with a dollar is it always stays a dollar, or pretends to, apart from them slowly debasing it, which is their trick. But you see, if you had a dollar that, say, imagine all dollars lasted a day, right? If they had a shelf life, you wouldn't have no inequality, because Bill Gates or somebody like that, he couldn't accumulate any dollars any faster than anybody else. At the end of the day, they would all be nullified. And so if you say, well, how would that work? So, well, that's how we're supposed to live. As hunter-gatherers, in effect, have an economy that with dollars that expire within a day. The reason why the Piraha and stuff don't hoard food or get rich or get socially unequal. Yeah, I mean, hunter-gatherers are not all equal. They're egalitarian because they can't accumulate any wealth. There's strong prohibitions against wealth accumulation. What they've done with the dollar is done this fraud to say, like, everything else is perishable. Everything else is a fish that go rotten in a day. It's a cabbage that goes off in a week, and everything. You can't really hoard anything out of nature. And so, but by the time you get to metals, and then by the time you get to the pure fiction of digital currency, you have this fraud that says, oh no, it's going to last forever. I've got this Bitcoin and it's going to last forever. And it's like, come on, man, this is a fraud. If you made it disappear in a day, you'd have a much fairer currency. Or you'd have a much fairer economy. You'd have a much fairer life. But I hope the point is not lost here, because the whole economy, what I was saying about hedging against the risk premium, this is where we've got to. Is all the guys who have all the money, a third of that money, there was 9 trillion or something that was pumped into the economy for COVID, and a third of that went to all these bastards, Zuck and Elon Musk and Soros and all of these guys who are already stuffed to the gills with money. A third of that $3 trillion went to, I think it was like 60 guys. And you say, well, how does that money go? And it was really because they hedge funds, right? So they really hedged the risk. So they're doing insurance against those assets. That's how the hedge funds, State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock, and those guys now own everything. They have everything on the board, and the reason is that they were, making this fake insurance company in effect on all the assets. So the assets floated up and down and were random, but they took all the money as a premium and pretended that there was no randomness. And so that anybody since Bernanke has been trying to smooth out the economy and smooth out growth. And you say, well, you can do that. That's exactly what Bernie Madoff did. They're all doing it. It's strange they prosecuted Bernie Madoff because they're prosecuting him for doing a Ponzi scheme, and they're doing exactly the same thing. I feel sorry for Bernie Madoff in a way. I mean, although he's a psychopath like all of these other guys, his only crime was that basically the bell rang, and and the musical chairs, and he was left without a seat. But everybody, Bernanke is doing exactly the same thing as Madoff. Madoff just tried to please the market. He was just trying to serve the money. He was a good citizen in the financial world. And the market said, what we want is smooth, steady, predictable income. We just want slow growth that's very predictable. And so he gave it to them. It's just unfortunate that the way he gave it to them was a Ponzi scheme. But that's exactly what we're doing on all scales, on the monetary, on the fiscal thing, on the stock market, on the housing market, on the whole global market. It's all a Madoff-style Ponzi scheme based on smoothing risk, right? Smoothing risk. So the guys will not accept any risk. They will not accept that fish goes stale. Otherwise, we're in the Piraha territory.
Can I go back a little bit to where you were talking about hypocrisy? Because we're also talking about financial things. And you've mentioned before about the primate fixation on repaying a favor, a sense of justice in that. And I'm just wondering, do you see a conflict between hypocritical behavior and sort of violating that sense of justice that seems to come with the primate mentality?
Yeah, this is also what it says. We got to this dangerous little stage where if you see a primate just is going by instinct, and instinct is good. They have a strong idea of social debt and a strong prohibition. So the very German thing of kind of punishing debtors and stuff. By the way, that's the basis of the slave system. Slavery was based on debt, and you got to be a slave not because white people came into Africa and stole you and took you to a plantation in Jamaica. It's because Africans, black people, sold their brothers willingly, and they did it as they were smug. They sold their brothers into slavery, not because of the white man. Because they were smug as shit, because they were saying, like, you didn't pay your debts. They were scapegoating guys that went, so they scapegoated their brothers, and now they come today and say, like, oh, it was the white man's debt. No, it was you scapegoating your brothers because you had this false sense of debt. Now that false sense of debt is this kind of monkey brain layer that's kind of instinctive and not very self-aware. Now we have the alien cortex, and now we're in deep trouble because we've got enough smarts to manipulate that sense of debt. So the bankers are a little bit smarter than the rest of us, and they using our sense of debt. They don't have it. No banker ever paid their debts. Like Donald Trump's never paid their debt. If you want to look at a master of monetary creation, have a look at Hearst. He never paid a debt because he realized that basically, a debt slave is a debt slave. He's not going to be a debt slave. They never pay their debts. Rich people never pay. So what it means is they're not monkey. They're using all of us and our monkey brain. And everybody goes along. And, he's a debtor. He's a horrible person. He's a sinner. It's like the Lord's Prayer used to say, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And then there's like, oh no, that didn't work. As soon as they had the alien cortex on the top, they changed it. They changed the fucking Bible. The whole rules, the whole Constitution, the absolute word of God. Guess what? They changed it. Subtly changed. Now, what I was taught in school was, forgive us our sins as we forgive those that sin against us. It's like, you bastards. You fucking bastards. But anyway, the whole idea is that it's a debt-based system, and now we're in trouble because we've got a little bit smarter than Monkey, and we're not actually at the point we just have a large number of people that are smart enough to abuse our monkey brains and use it, right? All these kind of Shylocks and the Merchant of Venice, and we just haven't got to the other thing where you can actually transcend that. So we're in this dangerous transition period between, evil Machiavellian monkey and wise person.
So you're not wrong about rich people not paying their debts. In high net worth circles, it's called buy, borrow, die. This pattern. So you buy an appreciating asset, and then you borrow against it to have your daily expenses, and then over the course of your life, you just keep buying more and more of these things, keep taking more and more debt out, and then when you die, you get a stepped up basis, and it passes on to your kids with all the assets pass on to your kids with no taxes ever paid. So you 1031 exchange into more and more properties or things like this, where you defer your capital gains on stuff and essentially just keep borrowing. And rich people, largely, they live off of the borrowed funds, because instead of paying 45% tax or whatever they would have to pay if it was income, you have zero taxes on debt. And so you'd much rather pay 3% or whatever on the debt repayment than the 45% that you would if it was income. So rich people don't pay their debts on purpose.
Yeah, it's really funny that Elon Musk.
Yeah.
It was really funny that Elon Musk said the other day is like, hey, I get paid minimum wage. All these guys were like, really? It's like, wow, what a cool guy. It was like,
yeah,
well, he only pays minimum wage because it would be illegal to work for free. That would be fraud. So his accountants have told him, well, you have to at least get minimum wage. But the fact that he gets minimum wage means that he's a scoundrel. And then you say, well, how does he live? How does he afford, to run planes and have security details and this amazing lifestyle? And say, well, he gets it all in debt. So really, he has it on a credit card, so he's paying 15% interest on his life. No, those guys get. See, what the Fed has moved interest rates effectively to zero. So a bank will give Elon Musk a loan at 0%. Say, why? Because they make the money on the fees. They're all scoundrels. They're using the bank asset. The reason why the banks go bust is because they don't give money to Elon Musk because they hope they're going to get some money back on the interest and it's all a kosher deal. They give him money because they want the fees, the transaction fees. And so the personal employees of the bank make out like bandits. The stockholders of the bank make out like dreadful. And Elon Musk gets his money at 0%. And so who's paying for all this game? Well, the guys that actually generated the productivity that was represented in the dollar. It's you. But nobody, this is too boring for the average person to listen to, so they just move on. They never get it. And then slavery is a racist thing for white people did. No, slavery is what you're doing by paying your credit card and supporting the system.
Hugh, did you put up a video on the Timbuktu manuscripts, or is that something you didn't do it? I'll just state it briefly. It might have been something I found. It was a YouTube video on Timbuktu, present day, where a lot of manuscripts from when it was a prosperous empire, have been preserved in private hands there. And it was very interesting talk, because the fellow was describing how there's probably about 1 million of these manuscripts have survived, and he was talking about what the empire used to be like across West Africa there. And it was interesting because he built into it hints about the slavery system, that to sell the Africans, selling the Africans, and it was interesting to hear that, because it wasn't really part of what he was intending to talk about. It was so intrinsic to the way life was at that time that he couldn't not mention it. And so it gave a very interesting insight into that. I thought it might have been something you put up, but I must have seen it. I'll post it on XR.
Really cool. It wasn't me, but that's really cool. Yeah. So the liberals, in liberal academia, in the kind of circles that say, say things like, "Oh, racism was invented in the 17th century by white people. There was never a concept of race before then," and stuff. It's like it's nonsense. If you go back to Islam. Islam is fundamentally built on slavery, and nobody likes to talk about that too much. But in Islam, they say about the Zanj people, and Zanj people are black people, and bloody hell, are they ever the most racist people you've ever heard in your life? But the slave traders in Africa, the primary slave traders to this day, are Arabs. All those slave trading networks and stuff, the slave trains and stuff, they're all still running. They're just slightly more elaborate. The guys keep, they don't have chains on them. They just keep passports, and they just hold the guys' passports and stuff like that. But all those things are still running to this day. And the reason they call the Zanj people is because that's why Zanzibar was called Zanzibar. It's Zanzibar. It's the Bay of the Zanj. In other words, the black people's bay.
Well,
they thought of it as a bazaar for slaves.
I discovered with great surprise when I went to see my sister who lived in Essaouira in Morocco years ago, and I was introduced to the music, the Gnawa music over there, and it's a music that's got its root in Sudan. So I met some of the musicians, and they're all black, and they're descendant of slaves, and nearly all their family names are. They're Muslim first name, but they added Sudani because they're coming from Sudan, and they told me, they've kept the traditions of their music, the making of their instruments and everything from Sudan, their traditions, even their kind of religious practices, but they're Muslims. And I completely uncovered the whole story of the slavery that was happening at the time of the expansion of Islam through North Africa, and how the slave trade was the founding stone of the Moroccan kingdom, and all those down to Mauritania and probably Algeria too. But I really witnessed. I talked to them, and I went to visit their families, and the women they still marry a lot between them. So the women really look African. They really, still really black. And that goes back to the year, they told me 800, 900, 1,000. So that was before the slave trade started from the West. There was that big trade going on. It's very interesting.
Yeah, the thing they don't like to talk about in Muslim circles is the historicity. If you think the Christians avoid the historicity of Christianity, you should see how studiously Muslims avoid it, because the story we get now that Islam, basically was the story of Muhammad and how he conquered all the, from Messina, and then goes on Medina and stuff, and goes on from there. It's like it's not at all correct. If the historians look at it now and say, no, the Arab Empire came first. Then it was some guy called Suleiman, I think. He was a big Arab king, and he invented Islam as an afterthought to justify his empire and his kingdom. So he got one of his ancestors who was just some guy in the desert called Muhammad, and he made all these writings about him and made this filled in this backstory to justify him as a king because he had no credentials. He was just a slave owner. And so the essence of Islam is seedy as all hell and intricately bound up with slavery. But you won't. People won't say that. But if you want to be politically correct, the very first thing you got to do is start pointing out stuff like the subprime loan crisis in 2008 was a slave market crisis. The subprime loans are just it's just a euphemism for loans to black people. And so basically the subprime loan collapse was the collapse of the debt slave market in African Americans. And so you got to start there and shut up about the historical shit about stolen from Africa shit and say, like, let's go back to 2008 when there was a black president and how all these slaves are still chained with debt called mortgage-backed securities. Because basically a mortgage-backed security is a bet that a black man will actually carry the load and not stumble. That's what a mortgage-backed security is. So if they call it BlackRock, it's like, whoa, that's a Zange name there, BlackRock. Know what he's talking about. Somewhere down the line, there's somebody who's normally of color who actually is producing all the shit. And everybody else, including all the little white people, who tapping on their keyboards and going down to XR and stuff and say, all you little hypocrites are house slaves built on top of the system. You don't produce anything. All the black people produce it, and you're running bets on the back of them.
There's a question there of Ryan. He was asking, what are the sources for the king who sponsored Islam? Because I didn't get the name either. What did you...
I can't remember what his name is. I think he was Suleiman or something like that. It's hard to find stuff of this because it's so politically incorrect. But there was a video I saw a while back of this guy saying the historical origins of Islam. I think he took a lot of heat for that video, but he came out and said what no one will say, and that's that the historians are very loath to talk about the subject as the historical origins, but he came out and talked about the forbidden shit.
Is this why the split in Islam, the Shia and the Sunnis, does that originate back there with this kind of artificial creation of Muhammad?
They're supposed to be two descendants of Muhammad, yeah, I'm not really sure about historically where that split happens. You see that it's confounded by the fact that Islam just like pops into the mix, and not necessarily in Saudi Arabia. It's probably a bit further north. It's probably the Dome of the Rock and stuff like that those were the first, I think, first serious monuments that they had to Islam. But kind of people think, well, you got Muhammad, and then there's this story, and then you eventually get to the temple on the Dome of the Rock and stuff, and say, like, no, they're far more contemporaneous. I think the guy who built the Dome on the Rock is the same guy that invented Islam. They cooked it up out of whole cloth.
Well, what about the military victories, though?
No, that's what came first. You see, that's the bugger. Is that all these guys had all these military victories? They accumulated wealth, and through conquest, and then this guy to actually justify himself as a king without any credentials is he filled in his backstory.
But the Sunni and the Shia thing, Gary, is a dispute of descendants of Muhammad over inheritance. Basically, it was basically.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know very much about it. I understood it as a conflict between the biological descendants of Muhammad claiming ascendancy over the spiritual descendants. So there was a kind of how can I put it? you know, there was a kind of an ideological
The
lineage, and
imams against the thing. Yeah, the
yeah,
imams against
yeah.
the household. No, I
Mm.
think they're both descendants of him. They're both legitimate descendants.
They have exactly the same things, the same belief, the same Quran, the same. It's just that it's the split that happened over very shortly after Muhammad died. So there was a branch that became
Yeah,
Shia, and
that's how I understand it.
and
Yeah,
about 10% and 90% Shiite, and it's just became like that, and it's just stayed like that because it sort of identified with some geographical things and some traditions. So they've just, you know, it's basically the same thing religiously. From my little knowledge, I don't see it's just a fracture basically.
Yeah, so all of this was irrelevant until King Saud. And then King Saud stoked up this big rivalry, and the reason is just to keep his monarchy together. So yeah, he just invented Wahhabism and set it's kind of a divide and conquer strategy. But he's the one. The only reason why he was able to do it is because of the Bitter Lake Agreement. So Roosevelt went and made this agreement that America would protect Saudi Arabia as long as they kept the oil flowing. And so that was like the House of Saud was guaranteed by the Bitter Lake Agreement. And then he got internal strife. A lot of the, fractionalism internally in Saudi Arabia. So to get a radical base behind him, he started funding all these madrasa and these universities from Pakistan to all over the place. And those are the guys that have made radical Islam and all the problems that have come. So it's really the CIA and Saud, the House of Saud. And then the 9/11 and all of that, it's all these guys. It's factionalism between, Bandar and Saud, and I don't know where Bin Laden fits in it, but Bin Laden's from one of the
Bin Laden, the Bin Laden group has a monopoly on all construction projects and mosques in Saudi Arabia. So Bin Laden is really tight in that. He was maybe a black sheep of the family, but very, very connected to the Saudi family, the Saudi power base.
Yeah, but where the Prince Bandar is a kind of, I think he's a opposition figure, and then this Bonesaw character is he's not as secure as he'd like to be, but yeah, it's very opaque what goes on there, but very important for world events. Nobody gets an insight. Anyway, all these buggers are in with Israel, and they're busy plotting war against Iran. So look out for a bright flash sometime round about there.
Can I introduce a new topic, or do you want to?
Yeah, sure.
Again, was it a video you put up about David Bowie and Black Star? Was it?
Yeah. No, Survivor was one.
There was. There's many things to talk about there, but just to go out on something, a bit curious thought that occurred to me
woo.
is a bit woo, yeah. Just to introduce it for what it's worth. Was partway through that video, the fellow was talking about the skull of John the Baptist encrusted in its gold casing or whatever, and he called this. He said it's used as an ephod, which is as a focus for communication to the far side or whatever. And there's just a little sequence in that video where he shows symbols and garments that people are wearing with these I don't know what you would call them, badges or something like that with symbols on them, which are used as a focus of communication. And you know, I mean, it might seem a bit far-fetched, but we were talking, I think, last week or recently about means of communication between the Extinctionati. And given that we've recently done this work on the sigil, I was wondering whether we should be developing our own ephod for communication between the Extinctionati. I mean, I know it sounds far out, but
it's funny you say that, because I was thinking the same thing. But I thought that maybe we should leave it a bit till, you know, I think we might be getting a bit far ahead of the game. The way I was thinking was that we get the manifesto out there, and the manifesto, and then we try and you know, get numbers a bit bigger. I think maybe like try to get to a Dunbar's number of people. But I thought we needed more people for that. That kind of thing will put people off a lot. So the yeah, I would like to try some experiments and stuff to see what happens. But I think we got to do a bit more mind melding and stuff like that. Did you like the video of the Vulcan mind meld or the Borg mind melds with? I thought that was rather fascinating stuff about, you know, we've spoken a lot about the split brain experiments, but that was about merging brains. And I've forgotten about those twins in the UK that actually they co-joined on the head, and you can actually show say an object to one of them.
Yeah, and they can see the other one. Yeah. I mean, but again, that just led me back to the same thing. I thought, well, okay, so they were emphasizing that the thalamus that was common between the two brains. And I thought, well, yeah, but we just create a metaphysical thalamus. You know, I mean, I know that sounds easy to say, but that's basically what we would have to be doing to get that kind of communication.
Yeah, but I think it's all basically sympathetic stuff. So if you get the same egregore, you know exactly what other people are thinking, and that's how you kind of get in tune. Yeah, you first have to do a lot of alignment before you can get that. But I thought it was really fascinating, just from the point of view of the fascinating questions that come out of that. When one of them is, it's stunning that the brain can, you know, it's what it says about the brain and heart can self-organize. So basically those two twins actually, you know, they weren't vegetables, right? They were functional people, but with a unified brain. Well, you know, that says amazing things for plasticity of brain and how the brain is organized, and so, you know, embryology.
The medical name is Janus, actually, isn't it, for them, for that abnormality? Janus, like
Janus-headed. Janus-headed, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I didn't. I think these are special because they're kind of functional, right? Normally, they don't last. So, yeah, I mean, but it's amazing that, I mean, their heads look like severely smushed together. So it's stunning what the brain is actually doing to actually organize itself into a functional brain. You can see very clearly what it's hinting is that it's an expansion of an algorithm. So the neurogenesis is an expansion of an algorithm. It's you know, nothing much is hardwired. And that has stunning implications in terms of, you know, the hive mind and the one world order and stuff. I find it kind of fascinating with those truth stream guys, because they you know, they got a lot of things right, I think. But their whole shtick, I think, is fascinating because they're clearly individualists. And this whole tide of evil, you know, from like Klaus Schwab to the one world order to everybody wants to unify, especially the left. Everyone wants to unify. and they're clearly resisting this being merged into the bigger whole. You know, this is individual ego. They egotists that don't want to merge into the large pool, which is part of self-realization. In other words, the alien cortex is playing chess to avoid the big merge into.
Yeah, but here I think what they're doing is they're I think what you've got to do is distinguish between just being another drone and being part of a universe, if you like. It's just not the same thing. I mean, they're in fear of this kind of mindless anonymity, I guess. You know,
Yes,
whereas what the kind of connection you're talking about is not that. It's not. You know, there's conflating the two different things.
Yeah, it's the kind of the worst movies, the later movies of the Matrix, right? Where it's the hive mind and all of this kind of superorganism. So it's in the Great Reset, and you can clearly see that the whole of humanity is merging to this big change. In other words, we kind of are becoming a superorganism, and psychologically and every level, that's what's happening. And the strange thing is, though, it seems to be there are two versions. You know, but we are kind of this Janus-headed beast, because it's like whose reset? Everybody knows there's going to be a big reset. There's a big rebirth coming. You're all kind of pregnant with this, you know, these birth pangs. And it's kind of whose birth is it? Is it Klaus Schwab and these techno-humanists? Is that the superorganism? Or is the superorganism, you know, Mother Earth and the tree huggers and everybody else? So it's like there clearly are two destinies, and we're clearly going through a massive transformation and becoming a superorganism of one or the other. And so it's like, which one is it? The I think the transhumanist one is a false one. It's an alien that is the alien quarters substitution. So Ray Kurzweil and the Singularity and Klaus Schwab's Great Reset and the One World Order and all of these things that they're going for is a substitution of the real transformation. So in other words, it's a fake, you know, transition to a regenerative society. All of these things are substitutions of the genuine transformation. So in other words, they're trying to scapegoat or do a sacrifice of some, you know, lesser animal to avoid the change themselves. So they're all kind of dodgers. They're all trying to dodge fundamental change. So in other words, the Klaus Schwab's Great Reset and stuff is like, no, this is the reset where the alien cortex lives. They're like, no, there's only one way this birth happens. If the alien cortex, the ego, all of that dies. And so they're trying to do this false one and say, no, we're going to let the alien cortex and the ego into the paradise. And that's what all the thing about this, you know, mechanization, it's all this transhumanism, all this augmented Superman. So we're turning into Superman, but it's like, which Superman? Is it this silicon enhanced one? So it's, in other words, it's the same old bastard with a jetpack, or is it somebody that's genuinely transformed into a butterfly? What's at stake?
So in a way, that those two people on the Truth Stream media are unwittingly expressing their fear of the true transformation. But you know, they're condemning the Klaus Schwab style transformation, but in fact, actually, they're supporting it. Because
that's it exactly. It's the alien cortex is always Janus headed, and so I keep on telling you this is the most unpopular thing. And this might have been a reason why some people left, but say this over and over again as late into the video as I can. Is the Aryan is a Janus headed thing. The Aryans are clearly a false hybrid. You have these Neanderthal characteristics, Cro-Magnon. And so when you go back to slavery, it's really the alien cortex, it's really a Neanderthal in us, well, a hybrid, going back to enslave Africans that don't have this other module. And so what I'm saying is, if you have a look at the Jews and the Nazis, they're the same thing. If you look at the whole reason why we have this such suppression against Nazism and stuff, and the same kind of mirror image in Zionism, and all these the wokeism is deep bedded in all of this stuff, and it's the self-loath. That's the thing. The old trope of the self-loathing Jew. It's not a self-loathing Jew. It's a self-loathing alien cortex. It's just the Jews are Hyksos, right? They're Canaanites. They see in history they just pop up out of nowhere in ancient Egypt. But if you look at the genetics and follow through Semitic languages and where they must have come from, you can see they're the Hyksos. They went as conquerors to Egypt and conquered all of these guys. There must have been a revolution because they, kick off in the Bible as slaves. It's like, well, there must have been a little overthrow over there because they clearly came down with chariots and horses. They're Aryans. And the reason why you get this such thing about, this whole storm about Nazis and Jews and stuff is it's the alien cortex. And you can see it over and over again. It's like the black, white, the red. Those colors are fundamental to Aryans. And everything's suppressed. You're not allowed to say it. You're not allowed to talk about the swastika. You're not allowed to look at the things. You have to say that Nazis had no ideology. You have to say, oh, they were not national socialists. They're not socialists, only socialists in name. And it's like, guys, it's the same Janus-headed beast. This is our problem. Until somebody comes out and says it, it's we won't get anywhere. But man, you get the alien cortex. You just called the beast by its name when you say that Jews and Nazis are the same.
I think you hinted at something similar when you commented on the video of Paul Kingsnorth and Thar and Charles Eisenstein, because at one stage you said, if my memory is good, that you preferred a Klaus Schwab that was openly, doing the AC thing, than the attitude of Paul Kingsnorth, who was actually, by a kind of a twist, actually going the same way, but it was presented, I can't remember your words exactly, but do you want to comment on that? Because I think it was in the comments, Gary wanted to hint at that.
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, thanks, Sophie. I guess I'll start off. Here, you made a little comment. You made a long comment there under that video, and it began with saying that that Klaus Schwab was, he was well intentioned but severely mistaken, and at least honest, whereas Kingsnorth was being, dishonest, and that you would prefer Schwab any day. And I just, what happened there when I read that, I thought to myself, if you had removed the word Schwab and Kingsnorth from that paragraph and said to me, put those words in the right place, I would have put them in the opposite place. And so it was. Can you explain? As I looked at it, Schwab must understand that he is promulgating a techno authoritarian dystopia. That he must realize where that ends up. And on the other side,
no, he doesn't. You see, the reason why I said
that would make him a complete idiot.
Yeah, that's why I say he's a complete idiot.
Yeah,
I mean, they put out all their plans about the Great Reset, and he said, if you look at his book where he says, you will own nothing and you will be happy and stuff, you realize that he's got this infantile good heart with an alien cortex riding on top. So I mean, I put Kingsnorth and Schwab in that category because Schwab clearly has a good heart. I mean, he's pure evil. He's Blofeld. But that's because it's the alien cortex. Underneath his alien cortex, he has a pure heart. The problem with Kingsnorth is he doesn't have a pure heart. He's a conniving liar. He will settle for Christianity.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. Can you just go in
specific?
Yeah, where's the lie? Can you just zoom in on that with King's
Because
North?
he's the way I interpret him is the Dark Mountain stuff and all of that kind of stuff. It's painful. He's starting to see his own death, right? And so he's doing the traditional cheat that keeps everybody enslaved. It's the Christian cheat that says, like, Christ died for our sins. So in other words, he's substituting his own, he's substituting this fake thing, Christ and stuff, for his own transformation. So it's the double dealing of the alien cortex. You see, he's not. See, what's so evil about Christianity is a couple of things. A, it's basically saying, like, you're nothing. There's God, and there's Jesus dies for your sins. So in other words, you don't really have to do anything other than just believe this bullshit story. But you see, the essence of Christianity is you don't really have to change, right? So they have a baptism and a rebirth and stuff, and it's all shallow. It's all a substitute for. See, that's the overall thing that you see again and again in Christians. It is they've done a fake transformation. So they've done an artificial transformation. They've done a baptism. They've done, I've been reborn again in Christ. What does that mean? You're still a stupid cunt as you always were. It's like there's been no change. It's been superficial as all fuck. And why?
But is it?
Because you do Dark Mountain, you get all the pain of that thing. Oh, I'm going to be dissolved and die and stuff, and all this pain, and then you go, oh wait, I got a way out. I'll go for Christianity. Then I can do the switcheroo where Christ dies for me. Hula hula hoo. And ooh, I get off without transforming. It's evil.
I'm not
necessarily. And that's why I put Klaus Schwab over here. Like Klaus Schwab could transform. I mean, he's too stupid to transform. But Klaus Schwab is never going to be enlightened. But I mean, he's just an idiot. But King's North has self-awareness. So what he's doing is fucking evil.
I'm just wondering whether
I think you might be wrong on two counts there. I think he may not be an idiot, and he may not be a good person either. So there's a lot of PR and folks like supporting the image of these billionaire people, and you look at people like Warren Buffett, and they're absolutely intolerable people, even though they have this very positive image. And so for example, Warren Buffett, he's always saying, "Oh, we don't want to. I pay a lower tax rate than my assistant does, and this kind of thing. And so we should pay. I think we should all pay more taxes up here at this rich tax bracket." And the truth is that he wants the government to raise the taxes on the people in this bracket, because he's already made his wealth, and he's locked in the capital. He doesn't need to pay taxes at all, because he has he doesn't sell stocks, right? So if he's already locked in the rates, then he's essentially just kicking the ladder down from below him, so no one else can come and threaten his position. There are so many. When you're dealing with these sociopaths, they have always a two-pronged approach. They have the real reason and the good reason that everybody's supposed to believe in. And I think you're giving too much credit to Klaus Schwab and folks like that when you or not enough credit by thinking that their good reason is genuine. I think they're liars.
Yeah, no, you may be right, but you see, the thing that I see over and over again with these types, and bear in mind that I grew up with them, that they're just conservatives. Their only crime is conservatism. So you have to hang out with them for quite a long while before you see how fucking reptiloid evil it really is. So and what I mean by that is if you go and if you were ever introduced to the Queen, and you hang out with royalty, and all the glitter and the silverware and all the pomp and ceremony and stuff, and you went around their Range Rover on their farm and just talked to them, they'd seem like the nicest people you ever met. And so you say, well, where does it start to go wrong? And so you start to see slowly that they think they're on a different caste, and they are. We put them there, and so but say, ultimately, where does the evil come in? And the evil comes in pretty much like with a farmer. It's always, they always look like farmers to me. They think of themselves as farmers. In fact, the Queen and Philip, before he died, they call themselves farmers. The Queen calls her mafioso the firm. The firm. It's French, le ferme. It's the farm. It's basically, they think of themselves as farmers and as sheep. It's the noblesse obligée. It's the white man's burden. We had this in South Africa, so we weren't fundamentally evil. In that kind of conniving way that I'm kind of trying to tar Kingsworth with that devious kind of snaky thing. It's just a kind of a self-righteous absolutism where you just think, well, I'm a better class than everybody else. I'm rich and I don't want to give it up. I don't have to give it up. And why would anybody, everything in Downton Abbey is lovely. I'm very caring about all my staff. I look after them. They have a good retirement. I, castrate the bulls and, let the ewes run. And, it's all managed rather well. So it's all this kind of management and farming, and superficially it looks wonderful. Going around Balmoral or Windsor Castle or any one of their farms or estates, and you'll see they're lovely. They're oak trees and it's manicured and it's all freaking. And you're like, where does it get evil? Is when you start to really get into the meat and potatoes of see what they have to do to maintain that and what they will do to maintain that. So in other words, it all looks fucking ace when you're talking about Downton Abbey and it's on the PBS and Americans are all going, ooh and ah, and we wish we had a royal family. And say, like, here's the cost. D-Day. When you're on fucking Omaha Beach and there's some German guy who wants to go home to his girlfriend and he's fucking shooting tracer bullets at you and you have to have your balls shut off. Why are you doing this? For them, for Balmoral. That's where the evil starts. And so it's like, when you push these buggers, when you see what they will do to hang on to Balmoral, then you will see evil. You will see pure, unadulterated, fucking raw evil. So Hitler wasn't all that bad compared to where these people will get to when you push them, right? So that's... people, you see, you have to hang out enough and know what this farmer will do to hang on to the farm and hang on to his status is absolutely anything, no holds barred. And that's
can we just, do you mind if we just go back just for a moment to Kingsnorth, because you said you think he's devious and snaky. Now we've granted Schwab's obliviousness to the outcomes of his agenda. So why don't you?
No, he's fully vested. He wants, his agenda means he stays on top and all the animals on the farm are happy. That's his objective.
Yeah, but what he's not seeing is that it's creating a dystopic world. That's the part that he's not getting, that he's creating a hell on earth.
By the way, I think he hinted in his last email that he didn't want the meeting to be recorded, but I think I'll try to coax him to. I'll try to coax him.
That's what I'm talking about. You see, chess, playing chess, cunning, evil. He's strategizing. He's nice. This is not pure of heart. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
I know.
No, hang on. Can we just get one thing out of the way, which is that Schwab has got his blind spot in not seeing what the human consequences of his agenda is. And Kingsnorth has got his blind spot in not seeing that his religious substitution is an evasion of his spiritual responsibility. So in a way, they're both...
Wait, stop. Wrong on both counts. So, okay.
Okay,
Klaus Schwab There's no he doesn't see the consequences as bad because they are not bad for him. Right? He doesn't see that there's negative consequences
for him,
because it's not a dystopia. But he doesn't believe it's a dystopia for you either.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. This is the blind spot.
If you just obey and go along with what he is, then everything in the garden is lovely. It's you that are causing the problem because you won't go ahead with the program. To actually get to his utopia, there's no amount of evil that he'll do to rub you out. See, that's what's the problem with communism and totalitarianism on the left. Is like they're not evil; they're trying to get to a good place. Because they're consequentialists, there's nothing they won't do to get to the good place. The better the good place is, the more evil they'll do to get there. That's exactly what happened in Soviet Russia. It's basically they're all going on this journey to this wonderful, utopian, fair, fabulous paradise. Now there are these fucking jab refuseniks and shit like that just won't come along with the program. So what are we going to do? Snuff them out, do anything. I mean, there's nothing that won't justify getting to paradise, so snuff these fuckers out. Now, there's nothing wrong. There's not blind spots or anything. He's got it absolutely right. It's clear vision. Now,
but isn't Kingsnorth also trying to get to a paradise as well? It's the same. He's got the same agenda.
Paradise. He's trying to play chess into a paradise. You see, what Kingsnorth is trying to do is fundamental transformation. So he's fundamentally trying to avoid transformation. Why? Because he's scared of death. You see, if you vest it in your ego, this transformation requires the death of the ego. You don't exist in a very real sense. It's not abstract. It's not some kind of analogy. It's like it's an analogy when you do it in the Christian way. That's why it's a cop-out. But if you really, really, really transform, you don't exist anymore. You're dead. You're a dead person. I mean, on the other side of the looking glass, you completely redefine everything. But on the side of the looking glass that you are pre-transformation, in the language of that, everybody on the other side of the looking glass is a ghost. They're dead.
Isn't it still the same process that Schwab's engaged in, where he's going to transform the world rather than do the transformation that really needs to be done? Isn't it still a parallel between? Yes. This is my basic point: is that you've juxtaposed Kingsnorth and Schwab, and I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't see them as being very much different when it comes down.
No, they're not. They're not. They're both. You see, I'm just saying one's an alien cortex with a pure heart, or in other words, not an evil heart, and one's an alien cortex that has no heart. They're just playing chess.
Yeah.
You see, there's a difference. You see, we kind of grant people the benefit of the doubt in terms of love and heart and feelings. And just because somebody has feelings and stuff, then you say, well, he's a nice guy and he loves his kids. And I think that's a really harsh thing to say. And you say, like, you look a little bit deeper. It's basically, it's self-preservation. It's like there's this chess playing game all the time going on. So it's like, so a lot of this love is sentimental. It's self-serving. It's limited. It's not really love, if any. That's why it's better not to talk about these things like love. If you talk about love or anything you hang on your sleeve, that's a red flag right there. It's like, it's in Cordelia, right? Cordelia and King Lear. So love doesn't speak its name. So if anybody is speaking its name, you say, well, who's this fraud?
What I'm questioning is there going to be any point in talking to Kingsnorth in the first place? Because it doesn't look as though you're going to get into a point of understanding about what you're saying any more than you would get Klaus Schwab to an understanding if we were interviewing him instead.
I'm not intending to get him anywhere. I'm intending to let you guys see. You see, the great part about this is if you expose the snake, it's good for everybody. It's a kind of exorcism, right? You want a demon. I mean, it's no point in exercising someone that isn't a demon.
Do you think I should try to change his mind and ask him if he would be recorded so that a bigger audience could hear him, or should I
Yeah,
tell him
yeah.
we just record it for ourselves, we won't post it on YouTube, or I don't know, you know, we could just...
No, just say say we want to publish it, but just say that, like, we have people all over the world and not everybody can make it. So the way we do these things is to, you know, basically just have a few people on the call, and then we can share it all with everybody. But just tell them we have a tiny membership. It's not, you're not going to get exposed on Joe Rogan here.
But is there really, as Gary's saying, is there really a point in asking him? Because I'm trying to imagine what it's going to be like. I just
no, but I mean, Hugh, you've said it. You've said as much now as we're likely to get out of talking to him anyway. So I guess I suppose that's what Sophie means. What's the point at this stage?
No. I'm saying that he won't get it. I'm not going to transform him. I'm going to transform you.
Yeah, but you have, in a sense, by just saying what you've been saying for the last few minutes. I think all that's going to happen by having...
It's good to see it. But you see, I might be completely wrong. He might, either way, he might turn around and completely surprise me. So it's either way, it's good.
I've got to admit that I wouldn't have the faintest idea how to contribute to the conversation. I'd probably just be sitting there listening.
Well, I think a good start, Gary, would be to read his 3 essays on the.
I have.
You have.
I think yeah.
That's
I
not.
really enjoy. I enjoy
his
writing is amazing. I love it, but he's just appalling when he talks. It's just awful. But you know, at the level at which he's writing, you know, he's really very engaging. He this
is all the illuminated manuscripts, like Darren. So all these guys are writing illuminated manuscripts. It's all the sweet talk and stuff. But you see, underneath all of this stuff is anger. There's anger going through, and so you see this suppressed. And the other guy, or whatever his name is, the Jewish guy. Oh my God, he's a Class A demon. But you see, under all that syrupy stuff is a lot of anger. If you can draw out that anger, then everybody, he and everybody else, can see it. You only have to do it once, right? And especially if you have these false gurus. You see, the idea is not to get a nice interview or something like this. The bigger things at stake here. These people are all gurus, right? They're not just happen to come on YouTube and stuff by accident. There's an agenda, right? Everybody's got an agenda, and so the agenda is to lead people. And so you know, these are thought leaders, these are influencers and stuff like that. That's why he's very cautious about being on a video, because he doesn't want to lose his flock. But you know, these are vampires, man. These are vampires. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. There isn't anybody that can't transform. You see, this is the whole point is the transformation of the demon. So it's the transformation of the demon into a godhead, in a way, kind of like a bit.
So in a way, with Kingsnorth, it's instructive that he seems to have woken up to how the society we live in works very, very late. And similarly, he's probably going to be a very late comer to waking up to what his real awakening has to be. So, in other words, he's just behind. He's just a long way behind. Is that a fair enough thing to say?
So the church is makyo, right? So if you get in that, it's basically, you know, if you're on the Titanic and you realize the Titanic's going down, and you go and find a nice, cozy little Christian cabin with all these nice glittery objects and stuff, and you just sit there and think, okay, well, I don't care whether the Titanic goes down now. I'm just going to go down in my little Christian paradise. And so, like, why would you ever come out of that room? Unless somebody went in there and kicked the door in and said, the fucking ship's going down, Kings North. Stop this Christian hidey hole shit.
But
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I don't understand why there's so much strong feeling about these guys. I mean, one of the things I'm sort of fascinated by, I mean, Eisenstein in particular, is the way that I kind of like what they're saying some of the time. Like Gary was saying, their written stuff is quite good, but my response to them is this feeling of quite liking what they're saying and wanting to punch them in the throat every time I encounter them at the same time. And for me, it's this kind of conflicting feeling of like, oh yeah, it's quite good. I mean, like, I like reading Eisenstein's perspective on like modern medicine, which is basically slating modern medicine, and it reflects a lot of ideas that I think, and it explains stuff that seems quite coherent to me. And again, I feel an anger and hatred towards the guy at the same exact moment that I'm enjoying what he's writing. But I don't really feel like, I don't really give that much of a toss about King's North or Eisenstein or any of those. As in Hugh's reaction, for instance, you seem like really like, oh, these guys, they're evil embodied and all of this. And I don't quite see that. I see them as Wallies some of the time, or as I say, I have this kind of visceral reaction some of the time, but I don't think they really matter to any of this. I mean, like, no one listens to them really. I know they've got their followings and everything, but they're very minority figures in the greater scheme of things. No. But anyway, I'm trying to figure out what I think about all this stuff. But yeah, why such a strong reaction? Why is who gives a shit about Paul Kingsnorth at the end of the day?
Because they're a very rare commodity. They have self-awareness. So not everybody has the ability for self-transformation. So why I get so animated is they have the ability, and they have the strength, and they have the intellectual.
How are you spotting that? How could
they're not rising to the challenge? Yeah.
How can you? Why are you sure of that?
Because of all the polished manuscripts. If you see, most people don't give a shit about anything. But if you enlightened enough to write an illuminated manuscript, then you're worth caring about to put back on the path. I mean, most people are watching fucking soccer. They're like, they don't have an independent thought in their mind. They're just mouthing the last. They're barely there. And so it's like that's
Right.
the norm. And then you get these guys that are thoughtful, they're receptive, they're wired into the pain, they can do something like Dark Mountain, and then they run and hide in the fucking jeweled Christian cave.
Right.
It's like,
Okay.
My God, what a fucking waste.
And don't forget, Bob, because I know I'm the same with Charles Eisenstein. I discovered him years back, and I thought, oh great, I read The Ascent of Humanity. It was a big thing, but a bit like what we talk about, really, basically. But I at the same time, I've got this funny mixed feelings about him too, and get annoyed. But what really got me is when he started talking to Jem Bendell. Should I say the name?
That's a trigger word. That's it. Now we're going to get a strike on YouTube.
But yeah, when he got a bit involved with the people from Deep Adaptation, and then I started to distance myself from his works and his conversations. He wrote a good thing called The Coronation at the beginning of the coronavirus, but it was also he had gone a funny way. So I'm the same as you, Bob. I think the guy is really, really enlightened in a way, and on the other hand, you want to strangle him sometimes. Absolutely,
So let me put my cards on the table and tell you my limitations. So my limitations are, that I definitely want people to survive. What's coming is going to be very, very difficult to survive. And so to basically navigate this and to actually for anybody to get through this is going to be a feat of ages. So I'm not a big on me surviving. I mean, I've had a good life already, and if I pop my clogs tomorrow, I wouldn't shed a tear. I'd be amazed at the life I've had. But my limit is, my personal limit is my dog in the game is people have got to live through this. We had a very, very critical juncture. This is not, personal dingy dangies in the, jerk off on it with a pen and on a keyboard and, in the end times. We're going to have to be sharp as nails to get through this. And so my limit is that I fucking want our species to survive. It's not going to do this. You see, there's implicit selfishness and egotism in both of these characters. And saying, like, look, we're on the fucking Titanic. And if you're luring people away into little cupboard somewhere, we don't achieve this transformation. So it's
am I audible? Oh yeah. So
yeah.
It doesn't fucking matter what we say or think or do as to whether somebody survives like a flippening or anything like that. I mean, some people, presumably also people from like poor, not a bunch of white middle class people having conversations on the internet are probably least likely to survive. But my favorite model of like abused third world people who live by the grit of their teeth are more likely to survive some sort of catastrophe. So as in, I don't see Paul Kingsnorth loving Jesus making any difference, or so I mean, I understand a bit more why you feel annoyed, particularly with those people, because they express some sort of understanding and yet choose to be oblivious to key things. But I mean, really, who's gonna survive like the reversal of the Earth's position in space? It's going to be like some hard-ass motherfuckers who are lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. And realistically, only a few thousand human beings, if that were the case, is enough. And that's like, I don't see how anything that we're going to talk about here is going to make any difference to that, is it?
No, you're absolutely right. That's why I say it's my personal limit. This is the end of my ignorance. Is this the conceit that we can actually do something, which clearly we can't. You nailed it, but you still got to do something in the meantime. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
But this is my personal limit. Is I can only do so much sailing around and enjoying cocktails and watching sunsets. I've got to do something in the end times.
Yeah, sure.
So it's a personal thing. I mean, there's not any right thing to do. It's just I can't stand by and do that game. It churns my stomach, and I can't do much of the. You see, I do worry. It's kind of the faulty thing is that you don't want regrets, right? At the final time, you don't want to despise yourself or what you did. So you want to try your best to do as much as you can, even though you're absolutely right. We can't actually do anything.
No.
But you see, I always like the conceit of you never actually do know what you might do. That you see, in this kind of situation of the flippening, especially the psychological flippening, it's very much hangs on a feather, and so it's basically you don't know what this turns on, and it would be really, really horrible to know that all it took was a tiny nudge, and maybe 7 guys on this call could have done it. Maybe it's. You see what I mean? Is it's so finely balanced.
That's in retrospect, right? You only know that when you're reading the history or watching the docudrama later on that this event hinged on this. I mean,
you see, that's my experience. That's my experience. It always hinges on a tiny, tiny thing that's often written out of history.
But we don't know anything about that. I mean, I was watching like some sci-fi dystopian scenario movie the other day. And like in a lot of these, there's this sort of underground organization that has managed to come up with some way of getting past all this like robot spying shit, and then they're hiding in a cavern somewhere underground, and they're going to resist, you know, or die the evil whatever overlords or whatever, the mechanical dystopian sci-fi society thingy. And there's so many movies like that, whether it's like the Matrix, and you know, where you've got these sort of underground organizations and these people who are very brave. They know they're probably going to die, and they're blah blah doing all this secret society thing, and then at the end, you know, there's some sort of a fight with the evil empire, whatever, and they may or may not win in the movie. But I don't know if such a thing exists now in this reality that I'm experiencing. I don't know if there's anyone doing something like that where I live or anywhere else in the world, when we're actually facing like this catastrophic scenario. And when I watch these movies, I'm always like, yeah, you know, go the underground. And I know something about, maybe in World War II, you hear stories about the French resistance, or you know, the partisans, my alleged forefathers who went into the forests of Czechoslovakia or something like that and fought the Bosch or whatever, blah blah blah, with an old rusty teaspoon, whatever, heroically. And you know, so, but I mean, you know, obviously, you know, you wouldn't talk about something like this anyway if it was going on. But I'm talking about in the movie, there's something like that happening. Yet yeah, I don't know. I suppose if there was, you know, we would all be sort of backing something like that in any sort of movie that we were watching, wouldn't we?
Yeah, but so the thing is, though, all these big events, they all hinge on basically butterfly events. So it's the butterfly effect, and you don't know whether you're the butterfly. So I mean, the butterfly that makes the biggest effect. So you know, we all know we're butterflies, and we just don't amount to any more than a bug. But you still have to flap your wings, because you don't know if you're the one that. So it's kind of like if everybody takes the thing, say, like, we're all just butterflies, you can just sit here on a rock. And you say, well, then you're absolutely sure that the major effect won't ever happen. So
is that a cop out? Is that copping out then, just going, oh, I'm a butterfly against many butterflies, so, you know, maybe
that's the truth. You are just a butterfly against millions of others. But the problem is that because of sensitive dependence, and you don't know if you are the butterfly that makes the battle. You see, all you know is that we're on the field of Armageddon with these huge forces arrayed against each other. But since they actually equal forces, it's kind of like the Janus-headed thing is coming up against itself. So you don't know what the decider is. All you know is that it must be something very, very slight.
Maybe King's North is that
you have to flap your wings. You might be it.
Yeah, it might be. King's North, you know. But even as a fucking Christian, you know, maybe the Orthodox Christian. I mean, I don't even know what the Orthodox. I think that's like the Russian Church or something. Is it that he's joined with the funny hat?
Well, Bulgarian, I think.
Bulgarian. Okay. Which again, I don't know enough about them. Maybe they're all very cool, but maybe that will be the thing that survives. You know, maybe the post-flippening whatever bottleneck of humanity, there'll be 5,000 human beings who are following King's North as the Messiah.
No, but that's it exactly. That's why we need diversity, because you see, that's one of the things that's wrong with all this unite. We can all do this together. If we all come together, if we all have one world and all this, if we all communists, and but that's terribly dangerous, because of exactly what you said. Is my instincts are against, kind of animated by King's North because, of what I see. But he might be the decider. And so, but you see, you can only, I can't say, well, I'm not going to do anything because maybe he's this. It's like, you got to go with what you know is wrong. And so basically you go with that, and knowing full well that you don't have all the cards, and there's no right and wrong in this game. You're just kidding yourself. So somebody decides. But it's like you got to throw your hat in the ring and fight for everything you're worth, knowing the fact that it's all a game of diversity, and you might be killing the guy that's going to deliver us all.
Speaking of movies about collapse in this, there's a movie I want to recommend to the group, and that's Don't Look Up. It's a new film.
Oh no, we come across it already. So yes,
This is our
Sophie,
Bible now, is it not?
Yeah,
I saw it recently. Yeah, I saw it. I totally sympathize with the Cassandras crying about the apocalypse, and literally no one can fucking hear them.
I saw the trailer and I went and looked at sort of the plot on Wikipedia, but I didn't see the movie. But yeah, I thought, yeah, well, that's my life. I don't need to see that movie. That's me.
What's very interesting about that film is how the mainstream media, I mean, if you listen to the idiots at the sort of Guardian or whatever stupid newspaper you have to look at, they're all very dismissive. This is pompous Hollywood bullshit, blah blah blah, and the reaction across all mainstream media seems to have been quite unanimous in that sense, and of literally their response to this film is "Don't look up," which is, you know, don't fucking look up. No, really, don't look up.
Irony, the irony and lack of self-awareness. But it's popular, right? It's a popular movie, though. The critics are against the audience again, like one of those.
It's on Netflix, which is one of the biggest platform in the West for movies. So I mean, it must have been seen by an awful lot of people, because I watched it twice. I wanted to see all the details, and really, it's just, I hardly ever watch movies like that. I managed to get, but if you know somebody on a boat who's got Netflix, go and see it, because I managed to hijack one, and you can always find somebody who has it. And it's worth it. It's and it's a good laugh. It's very well made. It's very well filmed. There's plenty of sort of special effects and everything, but the comedy is just, I mean, it's more than, goes far beyond a comedy, far beyond. The message is clear.
Yeah, the movie doesn't really touch on this, but it's sort of a background thing, but I think it confirms something I've always noticed, and is that pop culture like dims your consciousness. That's why, you know, the people really can't process the apocalypse. It's because pop culture dims their consciousness. Yeah, you really have to unplug from the matrix, or at least get 1 foot out of it.
Yeah, has everybody seen Network from the 70s?
Yeah.
If you haven't seen that, that's very relevant here for that in particular, and
Especially the ending.
yeah.
Yeah, it's I think that maybe that Don't Look Up hit a little close to the bone. That's why the mainstream didn't like it. Anyway, well, Jesus, this is a long one, isn't it? So maybe we should end it. We've done worse than Joe Rogan here. Should we end it, or does anybody have anything more to say?
Oh yeah, I asked a question about the Cro-Magnon Neanderthal hybridization. So what did that exactly do? Like, I know about the FOXP gene or whatever, but what exactly did that do to like the structure of the brain to like create a potentially neurotic human?
Yeah, when they look at, well, it did a number of things. One of them is it turned white people white. Now, the geneticists don't like that. And so they've come out with this bullshit that says, oh, yeah, Neanderthals were pale skin and had red hair, but there were different genes that gave us like horseshit. It's like in essence, I think the signature gene is an AR1 gene. So that gene, you can see it spreading. But when they look at the effects, they mainly neural. They're mainly on the brain, and particularly in the frontal cortex. So it's essentially, it's given us this. According to my theory, anyway, it's given us this kind of self-awareness, because it's kind of this Janus-headed thing that's not comfortable with itself. It's kind of like a failed hybrid in a way, certainly psychologically. I mean, it's made the divided brain. I think it's now the very, very unpopular, hard to find research, but you can find it. There are occasionally papers published in Nature and stuff, but very hard to get funding for anything of this for obvious reasons, is the difference in race. So if sub-Saharan Africans, if you have a look at the difference between what the genes that Neanderthals gave Europeans and people like me, is they're mainly mental, and they're mainly on the frontal cortex. So sub-Saharan Africans have a lot more sciatic area, basically this area with controlled sight and things like that, and they don't have the thing that's Miguel Christ often talks about, which is the hemispherical twist in the thing. That basically particularly the left side is bigger. But if you have a look at the kind of traits of Neanderthals, they quite antisocial. They were probably cannibals. They hoarders, collectors. They would come together to like bring down a mammoth and things like that. But they probably have more language ability. And although anthropologists hate this idea because we're still very, very prejudiced against Neanderthals. They hate the idea that Neanderthals start doing art. So this hybrid is starting to do art, and in a way, it's one side of the brain talking to the other side. It's really a mental illness, art. And if you look at Rank and look at the problem of the artist, you can see him wrestling here without knowing the genetics or the background of what he's looking at. But you don't, sub-Saharan Africa, you don't get a Van Gogh. If you look at Van Gogh, you see all the things kind of distilled. You see this red hair, this self-annihilation, this you look at Van Gogh's life and you see, oh yeah, well you can see all the characteristics of the Neanderthal and the Cro-Magnon. So the Cro-Magnons, I think, are very goal-oriented. It's like in Africa, we hunted to exhaustion. That's a hunting technique where you just like wound an animal and track it. So to track something, you've got to read, you've got to think very linearly, you have to hold a goal for about 3 days, you have to track something you've wounded. So it needs incredible focus. You can never, I can't imagine a Neanderthal doing anything close to that. But so they need to be resolute and very social, Cro-Magnon, sub-Saharan African. Now the Neanderthals are the engineers. If you look at going to the moon, and a stupid madcap idiocy like going to the moon, the way I interpret it is you can see the Cro-Magnons, they have more melanin. You can often see this in the workplace. It was very, very obvious in software engineering. You get these guys who have tans, a lot of melanin. You have a look at the effects of melanin. You can see the difference between Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals. And so these guys are goal-oriented, they're team-oriented. So all the time in American corporations, you get this thing like, we must do this team-building exercise. And like engineers who often, fat, red-headed guys and stuff, they're like, this is agony for them. The social thing, the team-building, why are we doing this shit? It's because the manager is a sub-Saharan bred Cro-Magnon, and he's thinking in terms of, we do stuff by getting together, they're always on vision and goal and stuff like this, and all the engineers are going, what the fuck, just like, stop torturing me, like, do you want some software? Here, go to the moon. And then these guys, we must go to the moon. It's like, Neanderthals like, why? So they're both kind of safe on their own, because the Cro-Magnons could never get to the moon because they're just not engineers. They couldn't even begin to think of an engineering thought that could get them to the moon. And the Neanderthals, they're engineers. They can get you to the moon. They just can't see what the fucking point is. But you put the two together, and you can see that basically they have these guys that are fool enough to go to the moon, and these guys who are engineer enough to get them there. And it's like, but it's crazy. The whole thing is a marriage made in hell. And so that's the two of them together.
Okay, yeah, that makes some sense. Yeah, because I watched this. I'll have to see if I can find it, but it's this anthropology thing where he talked about Neanderthals and how when Cro-Magnon or whatever Devonian people were coming out of Africa or the East, he said that it seemed that the Neanderthals didn't like them because they talked too much, and so they started moving away. Yeah, that makes sense that the Neanderthals are, you know,
Well,
don't like to chat. I can see that myself too. I don't like it when people chat too much, so I like go to a quiet place.
well, you see, you're an artist and stuff like that. But so if you have a look at that movie, The Office Space, not The Office, The Office Space was an older movie about these engineers in a software company in America. And if you saw that movie, you'll see that there's this archetypical manager guy. He's still used as a meme all over the place, but he is the typical Cro-Magnon guy. And then you know the guy who's the Neanderthal is the guy with the red stapler, you know, and who basically eventually gets put down in the basement. But if you see that movie, you can clearly see the archetypes, and it's, you know, I saw this ages ago, so long before they knew that we had Neanderthal in us. I speculated. I thought, like, I swear we're a hybrid. Nothing made any sense to me. It was like, how can you get white so quickly from black in about 30,000 years? It seemed like awful quick. And so gradually I started, just in the office place, realizing that, like, no, come on, we're two different species in one. And but man, that idea was ever unpopular. But then Francis Parbo and those guys came in 2011 and said, no, and that just about knocked everybody's socks off. And so, you know, that was a gut punch. But the other people saw the same thing I did. I remember seeing long ago, early in the 2000s, this op-ed in Nature. It was just a bit of frivolous thing where somebody said exactly the same thing. They made this thing about the engineers bringing the Cro-Magnons and kind of red hairish white ones, and the managers being clueless fucking idiots who Cro-Magnons. And so, you know, it was just kind of a laugh piece. But I think a lot of people have seen the same thing.
What was
So
But it's
it?
born out. I mean, I looked at the science. It's born out. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically the hybridization combined the goal-oriented and engineering aspects of those two species into the alien cortex, and that's our problem, isn't it?
That's our problem. Yeah. So we're all
Okay.
engineers, and we're going to start geoengineering. You see this, but you see it's all, the genetics shows this, the linguistics shows this, and then, you know, where the two species met for the first time was in the Middle East, basically where the Black Sea is now. So you can clearly see this AR1 gene in it spreads with the Trypillian people. So if you have a look at the Trypillians and the Aryans, they Aryans, and what they can tell from linguistics that the guys, you know, domesticated the horse, they invented the wheel. So wherever chariots and wheels go, and horse chariots go, you know that's the Aryans. And so, yeah, but an incredible amount they can tell from linguistics, but they know they're patriarchal, that they do blood sacrifices to the sun. That's all sun worship, solar worship. That's the swastika and all of that. But you know what I think the swastika is a basket. It's a basket weave. So the Extinctionati symbol it also includes some of the basket. But if you want me to go over the rather incredibly fascinating story of where the basket comes in, but the basket is part of life rituals and rebirth. The reason why it's a symbol of, the swastika is a symbol of rebirth, is that cross there, the tetragrammion, is really how you start a basket. If you've ever made a basket, you fold things over in four and you just carry on doing that. And you say, well, what's this? There's a number of things they're trying to point to there. One of them is baskets in hunter-gatherer times in the Ice Age. That's you know, women would have been sowing the first agricultural seed, so they're gathering into the thing. But a basket has always been associated with the feminine and the womb. So the firmament and the big dome on top of us, they saw it as a big dome, a big upside down bowl, as how they saw the sky. And they thought of it as Gaia's womb, Nut's womb. So they thought of us in a big basket. And that the kind of eye and the start of the basket is analogous to a birth canal. So they thought we went through a birth canal, probably in Deneb. But anyway, that's a long story, but that's truly fascinating stuff. And I'll
how
go
does
through
that?
that. And, yeah.
They
Hugh,
had all the
go on, it's okay.
so they had all these like deep spiritual insights and stuff, but I guess it all got pushed aside for the goal-oriented, agricultural empire stuff, huh? Because that really appealed to the psychology, or how'd that work?
I think they were stable. They probably kept slaves, right? There's some indication they kept slaves, but I think what it is they're all sitting around the Black Sea, and then around 7,000 years ago, then the Black Sea deluged and caused a flood which displaced them all. And so particularly they all go in different directions, east, west, south, and the Trypillians go up. They're basically going up the valleys. So they go up the Danube and the Volga and stuff like that. But the guys that go up the Danube, they eventually get to Ireland, and the swastika and stuff goes with them. But those guys are Trypillians, and the Trypillians are out and out bastards. They, wherever they moved, they thought they were superior. So by the time they arrive in India, they all, Aryan Brahmins and the Arapa people, the Dravidians and stuff, they quash them. So wherever they go, they just quash them. And they genocidal. Well, it's me. It's my answers. Well, genocidal bastards. So they all move conquering. And the reason is Klaus Schwab. I mean, Klaus Schwab is typical guy. He thinks he's superior, just like sort everybody out, put them into line, kill them if they don't, fit.
You mentioned something not too long ago in this call about an article in Nature or something by someone around 2012 or something, just a few minutes ago, and I couldn't get the name.
So I just remember this article where somebody had exactly the same thought I did, and they put it in these kind of flippant pieces in the back, just fun pieces, and so it was just a fun short story of just this woman in a lab setting. I can't remember what it is.
You mentioned a name that shocked everyone, or like something that shocked everyone.
Oh, Franci Parbo.
Yeah, how do you spell that?
Franci is, I think as you'd say, then Parbo is P-A-A-B-E with an umlaut over the A. Okay. No, P-A-A-B-O with an umlaut over the first A. So Franci Parbo was, he got some DNA out of a Neanderthal tooth. Nobody thought you could do that, and he sequenced it. And the first major thing they wanted to find is there any of that in the human genome, because the human genome was just sequenced in 2001. So everybody waited with bated breath. I mean, the scientific establishment were absolutely sure that there was zero of this troglodyte subhuman shit. And they were bowled over when Francis Bauer said, no, there's it's about 1% to 4% and here's the real shocker, in everybody other than sub-Saharan Africans. So then that's a racist thing again. So that was another strike against poor old Francie there. And then but it was unequivocal. So then they tried to downplay it. One of the awkward things is Ashkenazi Jews in particular have more. They have up to 4%. But so of course the prejudice never dies, and they say, oh, it's a tiny amount. Well, the thing to notice is about this tiny amount is 1% doesn't work. It's not paint, right? It doesn't work that way. It's like 1%, you can have a couple of percentage difference between a gorilla and us. So like 1% is a lot. I mean, it's basically what you're looking at. After 32 generations, there should be none. So if you're looking at 1%, you're looking at a pure hybrid. It's like people like me, white people, are pure 50-50 hybrid. And that's proven by the fact that in that 1% is about 70% of the Neanderthals' genome is still extant in that 1%. So in that 1 to 4% is the major part of which is saying to you that, you know, it's kind of, imagine that you got a Labradoodle 10,000, 30,000 years ago, and you crossbred it, and you say, well, how much of a poodle is left in that? And it was like, if 1% is left 30,000 years ago, that's a solid hybrid, man. That's just a 1-for-1 hybrid. So, yeah, that's
the spelling is Svante. For
Svante. Oh,
yeah.
I thought it was Francie. Yes, Svante. Oh, yeah, sorry, Svant. Sorry, I led you astray there. I thought it was Francie, but Svante. Yeah, Svante Parbo. Did I get the rest right?
Yeah, Aabo with it's like a Finnish spelling with two dots on both A's.
Yeah, he's Czech. Yeah, I think he's Czech. But yeah, they've since gone and found a lot more DNA. But anyway, the whole thing about that
he's actually Swedish.
fascinating. Swedish?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was Czech. Okay. Yeah, and that's not good too. That's a bit of a strike against him too, because the guys were kind of quick to say, "Oh, this is Nazi science." It's like, See, this is the holy grail. This is everybody's tiptoeing around this with all the hot button subjects, Jews and Aryans and
can I just
and this is it.
I had a little...
they don't want to face it's a true story. Yeah.
I just want to insert a little bit of a point here. I was listening to the radio, and there's a well-known composer, conductor, and pianist. His name is Vladimir Ashkenazy, and I was listening to the radio one day, and everybody pronounces this guy's name Vladimir Ashkenazy. And this one announcer came on one day, and he said, that was Beethoven's Sonata number so-and-so, played by Vladimir Ashkenazy. And I suddenly woke up. By pronouncing the name differently, the guy had said a lot,
But it's funny as hell, because it's staring everybody in the face. It's just like, it's unmentionable. So,
well,
but everybody knows. I mean, you look at the Zionists and look at the Nazis, and so like, what's the difference? There's one of the first founders. I can't remember who he is now. Not Ben Gurion, but one of the established really ideologues that established Israel. He said that there's no difference between Zionists and Nazis. He said that basically, so Zionists are Nazis, that's just a different country. And he was one of the founders. So, but yeah, that's, so you say, well, what is this? There's some unique phenomenon. And they're like, yeah, this whole duel between the two of them is self-loathing. It's self-loathing, the alien cortex hating itself. These are battles between brothers, close brothers.
Oh, so is this is also analogous to the Pandava and the Kaurava in the Mahabharata? Do you see that
They're the same people. They call themselves Aryans, but it's so charged now. You can't even use the right words. The people jump through hoops to try and.
Is that Theodor Herzl, or is that before? Is that Theodor Herzl?
Oh, it might have been. Yeah, it sounds like Herzl. It sounds like the kind of thing he would have said, Yeah, but many people have said the same.
I think he was before Nazis.
Yeah, I think he wrote his
was like the guy who invented Zionism
before the Nazis. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
how long? When did Herzl die? When did Herzl die?
I don't know. But I think it might have been someone like Jabotinsky or one of those, because you had those sort of terrorist organizations.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a bloke now who's writing a book. There's a few books being written about collaboration between sort of Zionist Europeans and the Nazi regime at the time. And this is like one of those things. Ken Livingstone, a British politician, got thrown out of the Labour Party for making a comment that said something, well, obviously the Zionists were in cahoots with the Nazis, or something, don't quote me on that, but something like that. And he got kicked out of the Labour Party. And, you know, it's true that certain elements within early Zionism were looking at Nazi Germany as a sort of favorable phenomenon, which would help usher in the creation of a sort of Jewish state, because obviously that crisis, well, it would lead to what it did, which is, you know, the yeah. All right, there you go. Thank you. Herzl died in 1904, according to Sophie.
Oh, okay. 1904.
So it wouldn't have been him.
So that's a bit too early. It's somebody that overlapped.
Yeah, but no, I mean, like, a lot of those guys were like really supremacist, you know, indistinguishable. Yeah. I mean, in a way, I think that the difference, my take on it, which is somewhat personal, is that the sort of Zionist contingent are worse than Nazis, because the Nazis didn't raise their children on a diet of look how awful Nazis are. So, well, as far as I know, anyway, maybe I'm not.
No, they did the opposite. They said, "Look how nasty Jews are," and so it's like the same thing. But yeah, the Zionists had a secret agreement with the Germans to funnel Jews to Israel, and so the Hitler sent all these Jews in exile, like the Voyage of the Damned and stuff, and these ships to Palestine to kind of goad Britain and stuff and America, because no one would take the ships. They didn't, and they said, well, we don't want to aid your policy, so aid your pogrom. But the British soldiers actually fended off one of the ships that tried to land in Palestine, with Jewish refugees. I think they had to go back to Germany, and they probably wound up dead in a concentration camp. But the British didn't want to allow Jews into Palestine, so they had to make a secret agreement with the Germans and funnel them in. Anyway, what's interesting about all the stories, the propaganda all overlaying it, what you're allowed to say, what you're allowed not, it's so strict and uniform. And so you say, like,
by the way,
what they're trying to hide.
During that time, Shanghai was the only place in the world, other than I think Dominican Republic, that accepted those refugees. So there's a huge Jewish presence in Shanghai, and there's a or at least original. There used to be, and it got to the point where it was there were people like the Qataris and some of the other families that were so powerful that they essentially built the Bund and these kind of things in there, and financed the Kuomintang, the KMT, largely. So they had a deal with them so that they would accept the bonds and get high yields on them from the government, and so they backed that government over the communists and stuff. But early on, when Japan invaded, they thought that those Jews were actually the real people in charge in China, and so they tried to.
They probably were.
Yeah, they were the financiers. So they tried to turn.
Gosh, that shocks me.
But they tried to turn those guys to Japan, and failed. So it's fascinating. It's actually the family. One of the families was the manager for the finances for like 500 years or something. That family for in Baghdad. There are Iraqi Jews that came to Shanghai and made a name for themselves, and they managed, like, for, I think it was for the Ottoman Empire or something, had all the financing for the Sultan.
Yeah, we forget. We forget in our Western bias that the center of the world from most of the last 2,000 years was Samarkand. So it's in Kazakhstan and all the place we think is all like now. But the Silk Roads and stuff all went through the, still to this day. I mean, the BRI and stuff is just the Silk Roads. But
now it's the pipeline roads.
Yeah, the oil pipeline. Same. Nothing's changed.
There's a book called The Last Kings of Shanghai, I believe, and it's all about this story that's just really untold in most of. But there were more Jews in Shanghai than in any other place in the earth. More Jewish refugees in Shanghai than any other place on earth during the 1940s.
Yeah, my great grandmother lived there, strangely enough.
Interesting.
Shanghai. Yeah, I don't know anything about it. You've piqued my interest.
It's rather interesting that they almost wound up in Madagascar. So the British wanted them to go to Madagascar, but Ben Gurion and those guys didn't want.
It was that or Uganda.
Yeah, Uganda as well. Actually, they're very lucky they didn't go to Uganda because all the Indians there got slaughtered with Idi Amin.
Oh no, they were going to give them Uganda as the it would have been their country.
They would have had apartheid there. That would have been awkward.
They would have had, yeah. They were going to set up a Jewish state in Uganda. That was an idea. I think that was in Herzl's day already.
Well, that would have had apartheid just like South Africa, so that would have been awkward.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, they were going to do it one way or another, it seems.
Yeah, apartheid. That's the big thing about Aryans. It's apartheid. Apartheid and Aryans go like this, right? So wherever you see apartheid, and I'm talking about the jabs now, that's the little demon in the left forebrain here. But yeah, well, we should end it there because it's like gone a long stretch.
Yeah, I got another half hour out of you. Unintentionally, though. Unintentionally.
I would love to do the ancient archaeology and the ancient religion and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm super. I'm personally super interested in that stuff. Yeah. And then another thing I want to say is I find it just humorous, like darkly humorous, that the scientists and stuff are sketchy about the history. It's like you look at the last 500 years and it's literally white people conquering, indigenous people or killing each other over, resources. It's like,
if you want something darkly funny, then go and have a look at the lava flow theory, because it's what you're talking about there was a theory, a Victorian theory called the lava flow theory. Clearly, it's not wrong. It's actually supported by the genetics, and what it shows is that somewhere around the Black Sea, they always say the steppes because they look at a modern map, but clearly it's the Black Sea before it floods. The flooding probably made them migrate, so they had a big exodus. But this exodus then moves and they conquer everybody as they go, and then gradually Victorian explorers and missionaries and stuff, they started to piece this together with all these fragmentary evidence and bits of language and words that kept on cropping up in places where they should, and they gradually said, look, there's a big center around the middle, and then there's this lava. All these other guys get pushed out. Like you look at India, all the Dravidians, all the first guys. If you look at the Picts and all of the first guys in the British Isles, they're all pushed west. So everybody's been pushed, and so they made this theory called, the lava flow theory. Now, it's considered so fucking charged and racist that it's banned from the books. You know, you'll struggle to find anything about it. But it's correct. But it's they just scrub it. You know, they won't even look at it, won't even discuss it. It's because they know it's right. It's just politically incorrect.
Yeah, it seems just the whole like culture that's been created is desperate not to self-reflect. That's what it seems like. It's just utterly desperate not to self-reflect.
That's exactly the way I interpret it. All of it is an elaborate scheme so the alien cortex doesn't look at itself. The whole struggle, in this Neanderthal Cro-Magnon hybrid is self-awareness. It's the beast looking at itself. That's the story of the Western world. That's the story of McGilchright's divided brain and the master and the emissary. It's basically this struggle not to look at itself in the mirror. But in essence, this bad hybrid forces it to look at itself.
The lava flow theory reminds me in a way of the concept of the sotatic zone. I don't know if you've heard of that, which was put forward, of the kind of Mediterranean races having a different moral position than these sort of more refined white people further out. I don't know if there's any connection or not in that. Just reminded me of it a bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see it again and again because the guys are like, it's particularly interested in India because it looks like a layer cake. And you can see the Dravidians were the last guys. The really rural guys, the Tamils and the guys in the southern tip of India, they're very, very dark. And a lot of the Shudra, the untouchables, Dalits and stuff, they're down there. But those guys look like Aboriginal Australians. And when they looked at the genes, they said, oh, yeah, these guys are like, you know, they're 60,000 years old, right? They've been there for 60,000 years. But it looks like the Australasians, the Aborigines, they were beachcombers and they went around India, around the coast.
Through the islands, yeah.
Yeah, but the guys, clearly there were successive invasions to India, and then you see India's culture is very layered. So by the time the last guys, the Aryans, come in, they come with Shiva. Shiva's, you know, white, and they clearly don't struggle to tell them about the caste system and stuff because already it's kind of a layer cake. But that's why they're embarrassed about Kali and stuff. She's the mother goddess. She's very, very old goddess. And then they have newer and newer religions. So Krishna and stuff is blue. You know, he's Dravidian. It's fascinating stuff. All right. Let's stop there. We better stop. Can go on all night. Anyway, just pause a moment and reflect. Do the Aryans, the undoing of the Aryans, reflection. Oh, so try and reflect during the week and try not to let other people deflect you from reflecting.
All right.
Thanks, Hugh. Thank you.
Thank you. That's good.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
I'll
Okay.
have the match start soon. Bye.
Awesome.
All right.
All right.
Smooth sailing.